My brother wanted me to pay for his wedding because I earned more money. When I refused, he called me greedy on social media, trying to shame me. At the wedding, he announced, "Let's all thank my sister for paying for this." Everyone looked at me, surprised. I stood up and said, "Actually, here's the real story." His bride went pale. "Let me explain. I'm a 34-year-old woman and the oldest of 3 siblings. My younger brother, Luke, is 31 and was always the favorite child. Our parents spoiled him and made excuses for him, while I had to be responsible and work for what I wanted. For example, Luke got the bigger bedroom, my birthday gifts had to be shared with him, and he received expensive sports gear while I had to save up for my own things. It only got worse as we grew up. When we went to college, our parents paid all of Luke's tuition but didn't give me a cent. They said, 'You're a girl, one day your husband will take care of you.' So I worked part-time, took out loans, and paid for my own education. Meanwhile, Luke partied, traveled, and enjoyed his life with our parents' money. Now I have a good career in tech, earning a lot of money, owning my own house, and living comfortably. But Luke still jumps from job to job, has no savings, and expects everyone to support his lifestyle." The wedding drama started a few months ago when Luke and his fiancée Sarah announced their wedding. I congratulated them and sent a nice gift, thinking that was enough. But then Luke called me. He said weddings were more expensive than they thought, so he wanted me to pay for the venue and catering since I earned more. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he was dead serious. When I said no, he tried to guilt-trip me, saying Mom and Dad can't help, and Sarah's parents aren't rich. You have plenty of money sitting around while I'm struggling. I shut him down, saying family should support each other equally. Mom and Dad paid for your college, not mine. You've already had more financial help than I ever did. You're not entitled to my money. He blew up, calling me selfish and greedy, claiming I changed since I started making good money. Then he went online and posted something like, "It's sad when family values money over love. Some people would rather hoard their wealth than help family." Obviously, that was aimed at me. People from our extended family commented, saying Luke deserved happiness and that I should reconsider. Some even messaged me directly. Sarah, his fiancée, stayed silent through all of this. Even though I was angry, I still went to the wedding because I had RSVP'd months before. The ceremony was beautiful, but things went south at the reception. Luke took the microphone and said, "Can we all thank my sister for making this wedding possible?" Everyone turned to look at me, clapping and smiling. I was shocked because I hadn't given him a single penny. Luke stood there, smirking like he pulled off some big trick. Some guests looked happy, while others seemed confused. But Sarah, his bride, looked pale and shocked. Clearly, she didn't know what was going on. I stood up, ready to reveal the truth. Actually, here's the truth. Everyone went quiet and Luke's smile disappeared. I looked at the guests and said, I didn't pay a single cent for this wedding. Luke asked me to, and I refused. Then he made a Facebook post saying terrible things about me because I wouldn't pay. People gasped and started whispering. I wasn't done. Me? Luke wanted me to pay for everything, venue, food, all of it, because he thinks he deserves my money. When I said no, he called me greedy and told everyone I abandoned my family. And now he's lying about it here. Sarah looked at Luke, her face turning from shock to something worse, realization. She clearly had no idea. Sarah, is this true? I looked her right in the eye. Me, every word. Luke tried to grab the microphone, but it was too late. Sarah's parents, who were sitting nearby, looked furious. Her dad stood up, and that's when things really blew up. Sarah's dad, a quiet man who hadn't spoken much, stood up and said, You told us your sister insisted on paying for the wedding. Everything went silent. Sarah's mom looked shocked and whispered something to Sarah, who was now angry. Luke, babe, let's not do this here. Sarah ignored him and turned to me. Sarah, he said you offered to pay but then backed out at the last minute. I couldn't help but laugh a little. Me, I never offered. He called me out of nowhere and said I should pay. When I refused, he called me selfish and then ran to Facebook to play the victim. Sarah's mom gave Luke a death glare. Sarah's mom. The money you asked us for, was it because your sister refused to pay? Luke looked trapped. He was searching for an excuse, but there was nothing he could say. I glanced around the room. Some guests were frozen in shock. Others were whispering. His groomsmen looked embarrassed. Sarah's bridesmaids exchanged worried looks. My parents seemed ashamed. Luke finally admitted, "Okay, yes, I asked my sister to pay, but she should have. She has the money, and we're family." That made Sarah's dad even angrier. Sarah's dad. "So you lied to us. You made us think she abandoned you." Luke tried to speak but couldn't. Sarah's mom looked furious and turned to Sarah. Sarah's mom. "We're leaving." More gasps from the guests. Sarah. "Mom, wait." "No." Sarah's mom pulled her husband's arm. Sarah's mom. "We paid for half of this wedding because we believed a lie. This isn't a wedding. It's a scam." She looked at me. "I'm so sorry. We should have asked you before believing him." I nodded, but my focus was on Sarah. She wasn't crying or screaming. She just looked at Luke like he was a stranger. Then she took off her veil. Luke panicked. "Luke, Sarah, don't do this. We can talk about it later." Sarah's voice was calm. "Sarah, what else have you lied about?" Luke laughed nervously. "Luke, nothing. Just this. It was just a small mistake." Sarah looked at him like she finally understood what kind of man he was. Then she turned to me. "Sarah, how much did he ask you for?" Me, the entire wedding, venue, food, dress, everything. People gasped again. Someone in the back even choked on their drink. Sarah's mom looked disgusted. Sarah took a deep breath, and in front of everyone, she pulled off her engagement ring and set it on a table. "I'm done." The room went crazy. Luke started begging, grabbing Sarah's hands. "Luke, Sarah, no, please. We can fix this. We love each other." Sarah pushed him away like he was nothing. "Sarah, love? You don't love me. You just wanted my parents' money and your sister's money. That's not love." Sarah's dad looked at Luke's parents. Sarah's dad. "We'll talk about the money you owe us later." Then he turned to Sarah. Sarah's dad. "Let's go." Just like that, half the guests walked out. Luke stood there, shocked and angry. "Luke, you did this." I grabbed my purse and smiled. "Me? No, Luke. You did this." Then I left. After that, things only got worse for him. The venue still needed payment, and Sarah's parents weren't paying anymore. Many guests left without giving gifts, and some of Sarah's family demanded refunds for travel expenses. Luke's groomsmen were furious. His best man ended their friendship, realizing Luke had lied to everyone. And the best part, Sarah's parents hired lawyers to get their money back since they had paid thousands based on Luke's lies. Luke tried begging my parents for help. My dad said no. My mom was sad but didn't interfere. Luke had to take out a big loan to cover the wedding costs, and even now, he's still paying it off. Sarah moved on. She's now happily engaged to a great guy. Luke, he's still bitter and blames me for everything. But really, he destroyed his own life. And honestly, I don't feel bad at all. You'd think Luke would learn his lesson. But no, he spent the next few months trying to ruin my reputation. Luke went back to Facebook, claiming I ruined his wedding because I was jealous. He painted himself as the poor brother trying to marry the love of his life while I, the greedy sister, sabotage everything. Of course, he left out the part where he tried to scam me into paying. Family members who always spoiled him believed him. I got flooded with angry messages. "How could you do that to your own brother? You embarrassed him in front of everyone. You make so much money. Why couldn't you just pay?" And the best one, "You'll die alone with your money and no family." But here's where things got interesting. Sarah saw his post. Sarah had been silent since the wedding. No posts, no drama. But when she saw Luke's lies, she had enough. Sarah commented, "You're seriously still lying. Let's set the record straight." Then she exposed him. Luke lied to her parents about me paying. He asked her parents for money after I said no. He had already borrowed money from her and never paid it back. Then she dropped the bomb. "Maybe tell your family why I really left. Should I post the screenshots?" She had proof. Turns out, Luke wasn't just a liar. He was also a cheater. Sarah had proof, texts, screenshots, and even a Venmo transaction where Luke sent money to another woman the night before the wedding. Sarah found out after calling off the wedding but hadn't told anyone until now. Luke deleted his post right away, But it was too late. Sarah's comment was already shared in family group chats. Everyone was furious. Sarah's parents were suing him. My parents were ashamed but tried to excuse him. He was stressed. Most of the family turned their backs on Luke. Even the other woman dumped him when she found out he was getting married. Luke hit rock bottom. His reputation was destroyed, he was buried in wedding debt, and he was completely alone. Then he texted me. "Luke, I know we haven't talked in a while. Can we meet? I need your help." I ignored it. A week later, he tried again. "Luke, I'm serious. I need a loan, just enough to get back on my feet." I ignored him again. Then one final message. "Luke, if you don't help me, you're dead to me." I laughed because honestly, he was already dead to me. I never responded and haven't heard from him since. Sarah is happily married now and expecting her first child. Luke, he's still struggling. After burning so many bridges, he's been working random jobs and moving from place to place. As for me, I'm living my best life, surrounded by people who actually care about me. And to anyone who thinks I should have paid for Luke's wedding, I think his situation shows some people don't deserve help. I thought it was all over. Luke had ruined his own life and I had moved on. But then, he tried to drag me down with him. Months after his wedding disaster, my mom called. I almost didn't pick up, knowing it would be about Luke. I was right. "Mom, he's struggling, honey. He lost his job and his landlord is kicking him out. He just needs some help." I sighed. "Me? And what do you want me to do about it?" "Mom, he's your brother. Can't you let him stay with you for a while?" I couldn't help but laugh, really laugh. "Me? You want me to let him stay in my house?" The brother who tried to humiliate me, called me greedy, lied about me, and cheated on his fiancée. That brother? "Mom, he's learned his lesson." I knew she was just making excuses, so I asked, "Has he even apologized?" Silence. Then she said, "Well, he's embarrassed." That told me everything. He still thought I owed him something. So I told my mom, he can figure it out himself. I'm done. And I hung up. Apparently, my answer wasn't what he wanted because, a week later, I got an email from my company's HR department with the subject line, "Urgent fraudulent complaint." Someone had sent an anonymous email to my workplace accusing me of financial misconduct and bullying. They even included fake screenshots of emails I had supposedly sent. But the screenshots were so badly edited, it was almost funny. Wrong fonts, mismatched dates, and even one email where my name was spelled wrong. HR flagged it as fake, but I wasn't going to let this go. I asked a friend in its security to track down who sent it. And guess what? It was Luke. Since he tried to ruin my career, I decided to fight back. I did 3 things. Called the police. I reported him for fraud and defamation with all the evidence, emails, IP address, and confirmation from my company. The police contacted him, and he panicked. Told his landlord. I reached out to his landlord, who I happened to know, and mentioned Luke was under police investigation. The landlord didn't even wait until the end of the month. Luke was kicked out within a week. Informed Sarah's parents. I sent everything, his fake complaint, the police report, and my company's statement, to Sarah's parents. They replied, "We'll make sure no one in our circle ever helps him again." That meant no money, no connections, nothing. With no home, no money, and a fraud case against him, Luke tried one last time. He called me, begging. "Luke, please, I messed up. I'll do anything. Just let me stay for a bit. Just a couch, a few days." I let him finish talking, then said the most satisfying words of my life. "Me, you're dead to me." And I hung up. Luke disappeared. No one in the family has heard from him in over a year. Last I heard, he was crashing at friends' places, burning bridges one after another. Meanwhile, I'm living my best life, and I have no regrets.
In the hushed stillness of our bedroom, the words fell from Mark's lips like a guillotine's blade. "You should go to Hawaii by yourself." His voice, devoid of warmth, sliced through the air, severing the last thread of hope I clung to. My name is Emily Carter. At 30, I had believed I found stability in Mark Anderson, my partner of 6 years. But tonight, the mask fell, revealing the ugly truth. I stood there, a mix of disbelief and burgeoning fury coursing through me. "Are you serious, Mark?" My voice barely rose above a whisper. "Our honeymoon is tomorrow, and you say this?" Mark avoided my gaze, his fingers nervously drumming on the kitchen counter. I can't hide it anymore, Em. I've been seeing someone else. The confession hit me like a tidal wave, yet in the oddest way, it made sense. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the growing distance between us. How could I have been so blind? Who is she? The question escaped my lips, a part of me not wanting to know. It doesn't matter. What matters is I can't go with you. His nonchalant dismissal of our years together ignited a fire within me. The pain of betrayal was acute, but beneath it lay an ember of rage, fanned into life by his callousness. You're choosing her over me, over us? I fought to keep my voice steady. Mark sighed, a sound that spoke of annoyance rather than remorse. I guess I am. The starkness of his admission was a slap in the face. 6 years of love, companionship, and shared dreams, all reduced to nothing in a single conversation. Fine, I said, my voice laced with a coldness I didn't know I possessed. Enjoy your new life, Mark. I hope she's worth it. I turned on my heel and strode to our bedroom, each step fueled by a growing determination. If Mark thought he could discard me so easily, he was sorely mistaken. The pain he inflicted tonight wouldn't go unanswered. As I packed my suitcase, my mind raced. The honeymoon to Hawaii, a trip meant for two, now a solitary venture. A bitter laugh escaped me. Perhaps this was the universe's twisted way of granting me freedom. The night wore on, the silence of our apartment punctuated by the sound of my packing. Mark didn't come to the bedroom, nor did I expect him to. The man I loved or thought I loved was a stranger now. By dawn, my suitcase stood ready by the door, a symbolic severance of my ties with Mark. As I looked around the room, a room that once harbored dreams of a shared future, I felt a resolve solidify within me. Mark Anderson, you will regret this night. This isn't just a trip to Hawaii anymore. It's the beginning of your downfall. As the plane soared towards Hawaii, I, Emily Carter, sat gazing at the cloud-strewn sky, my thoughts a tumultuous storm. The seat beside me, meant for Mark, stood as a glaring reminder of the betrayal that had set me on this journey. In the confined space of the airplane, memories of Mark and me swirled around, mocking me with their sweetness turned sour. I remembered our first meeting, the laughter-filled dates, the day he proposed. Each memory, once cherished, now felt like shards of glass piercing my heart. But amidst the pain, a plan was taking shape. A plan not just of moving on, but of ensuring Mark felt a fraction of the pain he had inflicted on me. It was not just about revenge, it was about justice. The flight attendant's voice jolted me back to reality. "Would you like anything to drink, ma'am?" "Just water, thank you," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. As she moved away, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. "I see you're still going to Hawaii," his text read, a trace of accusation in his words. I typed back, my fingers steady. "Yes, Mark, you made your choice, and I've made mine." "You're being dramatic. We can talk about this when you're back," he replied, the audacity of his message igniting my anger further. "There's nothing left to talk about. Enjoy your life with her." I hit send and turned off my phone. I wasn't going to let Mark disrupt my thoughts any longer. As the plane descended into Hawaii, a plan crystallized in my mind. I would use this trip not just for healing, but to set the stage for Mark's comeuppance. He would learn that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences strike where it hurts the most. I checked into the hotel, a beautiful beachfront property that should have been the setting for our honeymoon. Now it was the backdrop for the unraveling of my former life and the weaving of a new narrative. That evening, as the Hawaiian sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, I sat on the beach, my phone in hand. It was time to initiate my plan. I began with a simple post on social media, a picture of the sunset with a caption that hinted at new beginnings and unexpected turns. The post was ambiguous, but I knew it would stir curiosity among our friends and family. I wanted Mark to feel the eyes of our shared world on him, questioning, doubting. It was the first step in showing him that his actions would not remain hidden in the shadows. I spent the next few days exploring Hawaii, each activity a bittersweet experience. Kayaking, hiking, lounging on the beach, I did it all, documenting my solo journey on social media, my posts a mix of subtle jabs and overt displays of my newfound independence. One evening, as I dined alone in a cozy restaurant, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark's sister, Laura. "Emily, are you okay? Your posts seem off. Is everything all right with you and Mark?" I stared at the message, a part of me feeling guilty for worrying her. But this was a necessary part of my plan. Mark's facade had to crumble, and it had to start from within his circle. Hey Laura, thanks for checking in. Let's just say life has thrown me some unexpected curves. I'll explain more when I'm back. Hope you're well. As I sent the message, I knew it would set the rumor mill in motion. Laura, caring and concerned, would undoubtedly share her worries with others. Mark's betrayal, once a painful stab in my heart, was now the weapon I wielded with precision. In the days that followed, I felt a transformation within me. With each post, each step I took alone in Hawaii, I was shedding the skin of the woman who loved and trusted Mark Anderson. In her place stood someone stronger, fiercer, and ready to ensure that karma was not just a concept, but a reality that Mark would soon face. The Hawaiian sun cast its warm glow over the ocean, a stark contrast to the cold resolve in my heart. Emily Carter, once a believer in fairy tale endings, now played the lead in a tale of deceit and retribution. As I sipped my coffee at a seaside cafe, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. His words, filled with feigned concern, only fueled my resolve. Emily, we need to talk. I'm worried about you. With a wry smile, I texted back. There's nothing to worry about, Mark. I'm enjoying Hawaii, just like you're probably enjoying your time with her. His quick response, laced with frustration, didn't surprise me. This is ridiculous, Em. You're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? I typed, my fingers moving deftly across the screen. Or maybe you're just beginning to realize the consequences of your actions. I hit send and turned off my phone, unwilling to let Mark's words disrupt the plan I had meticulously crafted. The cafe's serene ambiance provided the perfect backdrop for plotting my next move. It was time for Mark to feel the sting of betrayal, just as I had. Over the next few days, I executed my plan with precision. I contacted a lawyer to start the legal separation process and gathered evidence of Mark's infidelity. Every step I took was a calculated move to dismantle the life we had built together, piece by piece. One evening, as I strolled along the beach, I paused to watch a couple laughing together by the water's edge. A pang of sadness hit me, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of empowerment. I was no longer the victim in this story. I was the architect of my own destiny. I made my way back to the hotel and logged onto my laptop. It was time to take my plan public. I drafted a post, a beautifully worded piece that spoke of new beginnings and the courage to walk away from what no longer served me. The post was cryptic, yet its underlying message was clear. I was moving on from Mark, and I was doing it with grace and strength. Within minutes of hitting post, the responses flooded in. Words of encouragement, support, and even curiosity about what had prompted such a change. Among the sea of comments, one caught my eye. It was from a mutual friend, asking if everything was okay between me and Mark. I replied, my words carefully chosen to fuel the speculation without revealing too much. Life has a way of revealing truths we never expected. Mark and I are figuring things out. As I closed my laptop, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The seeds of doubt were planted, and soon they would sprout, entangling Mark in a web of his own making. The following day, as I prepared to leave Hawaii, I felt a mix of emotions. The island had been a sanctuary, a place where I rediscovered my strength, but it was also the starting point of my journey towards justice. As the plane ascended, leaving the Hawaiian shores behind, I looked out the window, my thoughts clear and focused. Mark's betrayal had set me on this path, but it was my own resilience that would see me through. I was returning home, not as the broken-hearted fiancée, but as a woman reborn from the ashes of her past. Mark Anderson's day of reckoning was just beginning. Back in my hometown, the familiarity of the streets did little to soothe the tumult in my heart. The plane's descent had been a metaphorical landing back into the reality of my shattered life. But Emily Carter was no longer the same woman who had boarded that flight to Hawaii. She was now a woman on a mission. The first thing I did upon returning was to visit my lawyer. The office, with its sterile, professional ambiance, was a stark reminder of the legal battle that lay ahead. But I was ready. Miss Carter, I've reviewed the evidence you sent over. We have a strong case for infidelity, the lawyer stated, his tone clinical. I nodded, my resolve unwavering. I want to ensure that the divorce settlement reflects the gravity of his betrayal. We'll do everything we can, he assured me. As I left the office, my phone rang. It was Mark. His name on the screen no longer stirred feelings of love but of disdain. "Emily, where the hell are you?" Mark's voice was laced with anger and confusion. "I'm taking care of things, Mark. Something you should have thought of before cheating," I retorted, my voice calm yet icy. "This is crazy, Em. You're overreacting," he shot back. "Overreacting? No, Mark. I am reacting appropriately to a man who thought he could have his cake and eat it too," I said, my words sharp. There was a pause, and I could almost hear the cogs turning in his deceitful mind. "Let's just talk about this. We can fix it," he pleaded, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. "There's nothing left to fix, Mark. You broke it beyond repair," I said and hung up. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. I reached out to our mutual friends, subtly revealing the truth behind our separation. The news spread like wildfire, painting Mark as the villain he was. I also took to social media, posting pictures and updates that showcased my newfound independence. Each post was a carefully crafted jab at Mark's ego, a public display of my resilience and his downfall. But the true masterstroke came when I decided to sell the items we had bought together. The car, the furniture, the little trinkets that symbolized our life as a couple, all were put up for sale. It was a clear message to Mark. Our shared life was being dismantled, piece by piece. The day Mark found out about the sale, his reaction was explosive. He called, his voice a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You're selling our things? What the hell, Emily? They're my things, Mark, and I'm reclaiming my life, one piece at a time," I replied, my tone unwavering. "This is insane. You're destroying everything we had," he accused. "We had nothing, Mark. You saw to that when you decided to cheat," I said, and ended the call. As I lay in bed that night, the silence of my apartment was a stark reminder of the solitude that now defined my life. But there was also a sense of empowerment, a realization that with each passing day, I was moving further away from the pain and closer to a future of my own making. Mark Anderson had thought he could break me, but in his betrayal, he had unwittingly forged a stronger, more determined Emily Carter, a woman who would not rest until she had her due. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the city as I, Emily Carter, walked through the streets with a newfound purpose. The air felt different, charged with the electricity of impending change. Today was not just another day. It was the day I would set the final act of my plan into motion. I arrived at a quaint cafe, the perfect spot to meet with an old friend and a crucial ally in my scheme against Mark. As I sipped my coffee, waiting, I reflected on how far I had come. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it was now overshadowed by a fierce determination. "Emily, it's been too long," greeted Lisa, a mutual friend of Mark and me, and unknowingly, a key player in my plan. "Lisa, thank you for meeting me," I said, my voice tinged with feigned distress. "What's going on, Em? You've seemed off lately," Lisa inquired, her concern evident. I took a deep breath, ready to spin the narrative. "It's Mark. I found out he's been unfaithful. I'm devastated, Lisa." The shock on Lisa's face was genuine. "Mark? But he always seemed so devoted to you." "That's what I thought too, but he's been seeing someone else behind my back," I said, letting a tear slip for effect. Lisa reached out, her hand clasping mine. "I'm so sorry, Emily. How can I help?" "Just be there for me, Lisa, and maybe keep this between us. I don't want to cause a scene. I just need support right now," I said, knowing full well that Lisa's nature wouldn't allow her to stay silent. "Of course, Emily. You can count on me," she assured me. As we parted ways, I knew Lisa would spread the news, igniting the flames of my revenge. She was the perfect unwitting messenger, her social connections a network through which the story of Mark's betrayal would travel fast. Over the next few days, I watched as the effects of my carefully crafted narrative began to unfold. Our mutual friends started to distance themselves from Mark, their social media interactions with him dwindling. Whispers of his infidelity spread, tainting his reputation. Meanwhile, I continued to present myself as the wronged yet dignified ex-fiancé. My social media posts were a blend of subtle hints at my personal turmoil and showcases of my newfound independence. Each post was a calculated move in the intricate chess game I was playing with Mark's facade. Then came the day when I learned that Mark had been passed over for a promotion at work, a direct result of the rumors that now clouded his professional image. It was a significant blow, one that would have been unthinkable just a few months ago. But now it was a reality, a testament to the power of reputation and the consequences of one's actions. As I sat in my apartment that evening, my phone rang. It was Mark, his voice a cocktail of anger and desperation. "Emily, what the hell have you been telling people? My life is falling apart." "Is it, Mark? Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to betray me," I responded, my voice calm but firm. "You're ruining me, Emily. This isn't fair," he protested. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? You cheated, Mark. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it," I said. The call ended with Mark's frustrated silence, a clear sign that my message had hit home. I lay back on my couch, a sense of vindication filling me. This was more than revenge. This was justice. Mark was finally reaping what he had sown, and I, Emily Carter, was the architect of his downfall. The cool evening breeze wafted through my apartment, carrying with it a sense of triumph. The walls, once a symbol of shared dreams with Mark, now stood as a testament to my newfound strength. I, Emily Carter, had turned the tables, and the sweet taste of revenge was more satisfying than I had imagined. As I poured myself a glass of wine, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Mark, his name flashing on the screen like a beacon of his desperation. "Emily, we need to talk. This has gone too far," he said, his voice strained. I took a sip of my wine, savoring its richness. "Talk? What's there to talk about, Mark? You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences. You've destroyed my reputation, Emily. My friends, my job, everything is falling apart because of these rumors," he accused, his voice laced with bitterness. "Rumors? Mark, the truth has a way of coming out. You can't hide from what you've done," I replied coolly. "This isn't you, Emily. This vindictiveness, it's not you," he pleaded. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You'd be surprised, Mark. Betrayal changes people. You should know. You're the expert." The line went silent for a moment. "I'll make it right, Emily. Please, let's just put this behind us," he begged. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. "It's too late for that, Mark. You've shown your true colors, and I've shown mine. This is the end of our story." With that, I ended the call, cutting off any further pleas from Mark. The sense of empowerment was exhilarating. For too long, I had been the victim of his deceit, but now I was the author of his downfall. Over the following days, I watched as Mark's social circle shrunk, his friends distancing themselves as the truth of his infidelity spread. His professional life, too, suffered, with the missed promotion being just the beginning of his career troubles. But the most satisfying part was yet to come. Through a mutual acquaintance, I learned that Mark's affair partner had left him, unable to handle the public scrutiny and the reality of being with a man of tarnished reputation. Mark was left alone, a pariah in the life he had chosen over me. As I sat in my living room, the walls no longer felt oppressive. They were my sanctuary, a place where I had rebuilt myself from the ashes of a broken heart. I had taken back control of my life, and in doing so had ensured that Mark felt the full weight of his betrayal. The journey had been painful, fraught with moments of doubt and anguish. But as I looked back, I realized it was necessary. It had led me to a place of strength and independence, a place where I could finally close the chapter on Mark Anderson and look forward to a future of my own making. Emily Carter, once the betrayed fiancée, was now a woman reborn, a woman who had faced her demons and emerged victorious. The sweet taste of revenge lingered, a reminder that sometimes justice is served not in the courts, but through the actions of those who refuse to be broken. The journey of revenge had reached its end, but for me, a new chapter was just beginning. Sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, I reflected on the transformation that had taken place. The pain of Mark's betrayal, once a consuming fire, had now dwindled to a mere flicker in the story of my life. My phone rang, breaking the morning's tranquility. It was a call from Laura, Mark's sister. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Emily, I heard about everything." Laura's voice was tinged with sadness. "I'm sorry for what Mark did to you." I sighed softly. "Thank you, Laura. It's been a tough journey, but I think it was necessary." "Mark's a mess, Emily. He's lost so much, his friends, his reputation. I never thought he'd be capable of something like this," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "I didn't either, Laura, but we often don't see the true colors of a person until we're forced to." I replied, my tone resolute. There was a pause filled with unspoken words and shared pain. I hope you find happiness, Emily. You deserve it, Laura finally said. Thank you, Laura. I wish the same for you, I replied, ending the call with a sense of closure. As the day progressed, I busied myself with work and plans for the future. The lessons I had learned from my ordeal with Mark had reshaped my perspective on life and love. Trust, once freely given, would now be earned, and the scars of betrayal, while healed, would always serve as a reminder of my strength. My social media, once a battleground of subtle jabs and public displays of independence, now showcased a woman embracing her new life. Photos of my travels, moments of professional success, and gatherings with true friends painted the picture of a life rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. In the weeks that followed, I heard snippets of Mark's struggles through mutual acquaintances. His attempts to salvage his reputation were met with cold shoulders, and his professional life continued to suffer. The man who once held my heart was now a mere shadow, a cautionary tale of the consequences of infidelity and deceit. But as I looked out of my window, watching the city bustle below, I realized that Mark Anderson's story was no longer mine to dwell on. I had moved on, leaving him and the pain he caused in the past. I turned my gaze to the horizon, where the sky met the cityscape in a promise of endless possibilities. Emily Carter, once a victim, was now a victor, her spirit unbroken, and her heart open to the adventures that lay ahead. The journey of revenge had ended, but my journey of self-discovery and growth was just beginning. And as I stepped out into the world, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the strength and resilience to face them head-on.
The morning my world imploded smelled like French roast and betrayal. I was wiping down the espresso machine when I found the first receipt, a crumpled slip of paper that would unravel everything I'd spent the last 3 years building. $47,000 at Bergdorf's, Emily's signature, my business account. My hands trembled as I smoothed the paper on the counter. The early morning sunlight streaming through the cafe windows felt too bright, too harsh. This had to be a mistake. Emily she couldn't. But there were more, so many more. I trusted her to handle the books while I focused on growing our little coffee shop into something special. "You're the creative one, Lauren," she'd said, laughing over wine just last week. "Let me deal with the boring numbers stuff." The stack of statements spread across the counter told a different story. Designer clothes, first-class flights, 5-star hotels, all carefully hidden beneath legitimate business expenses, draining my dream dry one swipe at a time. The bell above the door chimed. "Morning, boss," Desiree called out, hanging up her coat. She must have read something in my face because her smile vanished. "Lauren, what's wrong?" I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up around the betrayal lodged there. Instead, I just pushed the pile of papers toward her. "Oh my God," she whispered, flipping through them. "Oh my God, how much?" "Everything," I managed. She took everything. The morning regulars would start arriving soon. The lawyers from the firm down the block, the nurses getting off night shift, the college students cramming for early classes. They'd want their lattes and scones and that perfect little boost to start their day. They had no idea their favorite neighborhood cafe was drowning in debt. My phone buzzed. Emily's face lit up the screen. A selfie of us from opening day. Champagne glasses raised in celebration. I let it go to voicemail. "Have you called the police?" Desiree asked. I shook my head. She covered her tracks too well, made everything look legitimate. I signed off on reports without checking because I trusted her. My laugh came out bitter as burnt coffee. God, I'm such an idiot. "You're not an idiot. She's your best friend. Was your best friend," Desiree corrected herself. Best friend. The words tasted like ash. Emily and I had met in college, sharing dreams over cheap wine and cheaper ramen. When I'd finally scraped together enough for a down payment on this place, she'd been the first person I called. We'd painted these walls together, argued over chair colors, celebrated every tiny milestone. Now she was gone, along with my savings, my business account, and any chance of keeping this place afloat. The phone buzzed again, this time a text. Lauren, I can explain everything. Please don't do anything rash. Meet me at Riverside Park at noon. I have a plan to fix this. Delete it, Desiree said firmly. Whatever excuse she's got, whatever she's planning, it's not worth hearing. She was right. I knew she was right. But my finger hovered over the message. The morning rush started trickling in. I plastered on a smile, made small talk over steaming milk and grinding beans. Every transaction felt like a mockery. These people believed in my little cafe enough to make it part of their daily routine. Emily had made me break that trust without even knowing it. By 11, my decision was made. I grabbed my coat. Lauren, don't, Desiree pleaded. At least let me come with you. I need to hear her say it, I said. Need to watch her face when she explains how she could do this to me. Be careful. People who can betray you once will do it again, I finished. Yeah, I'm counting on it. The cafe door closed behind me with a cheerful jingle that felt like a lie. Emily thought she was calling me to Riverside Park to manipulate me one last time. She thought she knew exactly how this would play out. My anger, her tears, some elaborate story about circumstances and intentions. But she taught me one valuable lesson. Never show your whole hand at once. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I'd found buried in those bank statements, the one connected to suspicious transfers and late-night calls. Zane, it's Lauren. We need to talk about Emily Cooper. The game she'd started was about to change, and this time I'd be the one writing the rules. The debt collection notices hit my doorstep like fallen leaves, a steady, suffocating pile of consequences. I'd spent the night sorting through them, each envelope another nail in my cafe's coffin. Credit cards maxed. Supplier payments bounced. Even my personal account had been drained to cover the hemorrhaging business expenses. Emily hadn't shown at Riverside Park. Of course she hadn't. My phone lit up. Desiree again. I'd ignored her last 3 calls, but this time I picked up. I'm outside your apartment, she said before I could speak, with coffee and those almond croissants you stress eat. Open up. I considered pretending I wasn't home, but the thought of facing another hour alone with these papers made my chest tight. Doors unlocked. Desiree took one look at my living room floor, now a sea of red-stamped notices, and set the coffee down. Okay, this is intervention time. When's the last time you slept? Sleep's not gonna fix this. I grabbed a croissant anyway, the buttery layers dissolving on my tongue. Did you know she took out a second mortgage on the cafe? Without my knowledge, I don't even know how that's possible. It's not. That's straight up fraud. Try proving it. Every document has my signature. Perfect forgeries. I laughed, the sound scratching my throat. She even got my habit of dotting I's with little circles. Desiree settled beside me, her shoulder warm against mine. What did Zane say? That Emily approached him 6 months ago, trying to sell him insider information about my suppliers, recipes, everything. He turned her down, but I swallowed hard. He wasn't the only cafe owner she contacted. That manipulative bit, a sharp knock cut her off. We both froze. Ms. Wagner? A man's voice. This is Nathan Morris from Morris & Banks Collections. We need to discuss your outstanding payments. Desiree squeezed my hand. I squeezed back, neither of us breathing. We have documentation of multiple missed payments. If you don't address this immediately, we'll be forced to pursue legal action. The threat hung in the air like smoke. After what felt like hours, footsteps retreated down the hallway. They can't take the cafe, Desiree said fiercely. We won't let them. They can, and they will. I pulled out my phone, showing her the latest email. unless I come up with $127,000 by the end of the month. Jesus. She grabbed the phone, scrolling through figures that made my head spin. Have you talked to Matthew? He's got connections in banking. Maybe he could. I'm not dragging your brother into this mess. He'd want to help. No. The word came out sharper than intended. I can't owe anyone else. Not now. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. The voicemail notification popped up seconds later. Lauren? Emily's voice, thick with tears. Please, I know you hate me right now, but you have to understand. I never meant. Things just got out of control. But I can fix this. I have a way to make everything right. Just check your email. Please. Desiree was already shaking her head. Delete it. Whatever scheme she's cooking up will probably make things worse. I was already opening my laptop. Yeah, but I need to know what she's planning. The email loaded. A single document attachment. A contract for the sale of Riverside Cafe to a developer planning to demolish the whole block. The offer's legitimate, I said numbly. 3 times what the cafe is worth. Enough to clear the debt and then some. It's blood money, Desiree spat. She drives you into debt, then conveniently has a buyer lined up. She's probably getting a cut. She was right, but the numbers kept swimming before my eyes. A way out, handed to me by the same person who'd pushed me over the edge. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Zane. Need to meet. Found something about Emily you should see. I stood up, brushing croissant crumbs from my lap. I need air and answers. Lauren? Desiree's voice was careful. Whatever you're thinking of doing, I'm thinking it's time to stop reacting and start acting. I grabbed my coat. Emily wants to play developer? Fine. But first, I need to understand exactly what game she's been running. The collection notice crunched under my feet as I headed for the door. Behind me, Desiree called out, Just promise me you won't do anything stupid. I didn't answer. After all, stupid would be trusting Emily again. What I had in mind was something much more calculated, and it started with finding out what Zane knew. Zane's cafe was everything mine used to be, bustling, vibrant, alive with possibility. The scent of success hung thick in the air, mingling with artisanal coffee and fresh-baked bread. My stomach clenched as I pushed through the door. He was behind the counter, sleeve tattoos on display as he pulled espresso shots. 10 minutes, he mouthed, gesturing toward an empty table. I sat, fighting the urge to analyze everything. His equipment, his layout, his menu prices. Instead, I watched his customers, trying to ignore the voice in my head calculating how many I'd lost this week alone. Here. A steaming cup appeared in front of me. Your usual, oat milk cappuccino, extra shot. You remember my order? Hard to forget the competition. Zane dropped into the seat across from me, his expression unreadable. Especially when she orders the same thing 3 times a week for months. My hand froze halfway to the cup. Emily came here? Started about 8 months ago. Always during your busy hours, always with her laptop. He slid his phone across the table. Always meeting with this guy. The photo was grainy but clear enough. Emily, head bent close to a man in an expensive suit. Papers spread between them. My chest tightened. I recognized those papers. Our original lease agreement. That's Marcus Reynolds, Zane said. Developer. Been buying up properties all along this strip. The one who made the offer on my cafe. Bingo. He leaned back, arms crossed. Emily's been working with him since before your money troubles started, setting up the perfect distress sale. The cappuccino turned bitter on my tongue. She engineered the whole thing. The theft, the debt. It was all to force me to sell. For pennies on the dollar. Then Reynolds develops the block. Emily gets her commission, and your cafe becomes another overpriced apartment complex. My fingers curled into fists under the table. Why are you telling me this? We're competitors. My failure is your gain. Something flickered across Zane's face. Anger? Hurt? Reynolds approached me too, offered to buy me out for triple market value. But you didn't sell. This place? He gestured around the cafe. It's not just business, it's community, history, something Emily clearly doesn't understand. My phone buzzed. Another text from Emily. The developer needs an answer by Friday. Please, Lauren, this is your best way out. She's wrong, Zane said quietly. There's always another way. Is there? The words came out raw. I'm drowning in debt, hemorrhaging customers, and the only person I trusted. My voice cracked. I looked away, blinking hard. Hey! His hand covered mine, warm and calloused. You've got something Emily never will. People who actually care about this place. Your regulars, your staff. Hell, even your grumpy competitor next door. A laugh escaped before I could stop it. Grumpy? I prefer discerningly morose. His grin faded. Look, I've got copies of Emily's meetings, timestamps, everything. It won't undo the damage, but it's evidence of conspiracy. Enough to maybe press charges. Or, an idea started forming, dangerous and tempting. Enough to turn her own game against her. Zane's eyebrows rose. What are you thinking? That Emily's not the only one who can play developer. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through contacts. But I'm going to need help, starting with your evidence and your coffee supplier, the one Emily couldn't convince to work with her. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Lauren, that's playing with fire. Good thing I've got nothing left to burn. I stood up, energy thrumming through my veins. Emily thinks she's got me backed into a corner. Time to show her what that really feels like. Wait. Zane caught my arm as I turned to leave. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Emily's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous, I finished. So am I. She made sure of that. Outside, the street was filling with afternoon crowds. Through Zane's window, I could see him watching me, concern etched on his face. My phone buzzed again, Desiree this time, probably wondering where I'd disappeared to. I ignored it, opening my email instead. Time to send Emily exactly what she was waiting for. You're right. We need to talk. Meet me at the cafe tonight after closing. Just us, like old times. The response came seconds later. Thank you, Lauren. You won't regret this. Oh, but someone would. I just had to make sure it wasn't me. Desiree found me in the cafe's storage room, surrounded by years of receipts and bank statements. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the window, turning paper edges to gold. You missed our check-in call, she said, closing the door behind her. I was worried. I'm fine. I held up a stack of documents. Just doing some forensic accounting. Right, because that's totally normal behavior. She settled onto a crate of coffee beans. Want to tell me what happened with Zane? I told her everything. Emily's conspiracy with the developer, the staged financial collapse, all of it. With each word, the betrayal felt fresher, sharper. That calculating witch. Desiree's voice shook. We have to go to the police. With what? Everything looks legitimate on paper. I gestured at the mess around us. Emily made sure of that. Then, what's your plan? I hesitated. Desiree had been my rock through this nightmare, but what I was considering, maybe it's better if you don't know. Oh, hell no. She grabbed my arm. You don't get to protect me by shutting me out. Not now. Fine. I met her eyes. I'm going to make Emily think she's won. Sign the papers, act desperate and grateful, then use Zane's evidence to prove she orchestrated the whole thing. That's actually not as crazy as I expected. There's more. I pulled out my phone, showing her the email chain with Emily's developer. While she thinks I'm defeated, I'll be negotiating with other developers, creating a bidding war. Once word gets out about the potential rezoning, understanding dawned on Desiree's face. The property value skyrockets, and Emily's careful plan implodes. She loses her commission, her reputation, her freedom if we can prove fraud. Desiree's expression hardened. But Lauren, this is dangerous. If she realizes what you're doing, she won't. I stood, pacing between towers of storage boxes. Emily thinks she knows me, the trusting friend, the creative dreamer who never checks the books. She has no idea what I'm capable of. That's what scares me. Desiree's voice was quiet. I've never seen you like this. Like what? Strong? Strategic? Cold? The word hit like a slap. I turned to face her, protest rising, but the concern in her eyes stopped me. Emily betrayed me, I said finally. Tried to destroy everything I've built. What am I supposed to do? Forgive her? No, but maybe remember who you are while you're fighting back. She stood, touching my shoulder. The Lauren I know built this place because she wanted to create something beautiful, not destroy someone else. That Lauren was naive. That Lauren was kind. There's a difference. My phone buzzed. Emily, confirming tonight's meeting. The sight of her name made my stomach clench. I have to do this, I said, even if it changes me. Then let me help, whatever you're planning. No. The word came out sharper than intended. I need you clean in case things go wrong. Besides, I managed a smile. Someone has to keep the cafe running while I play developer. Fine. Desiree pulled me into a fierce hug. But promise me something? What? When Emily shows up tonight, remember the friend she used to be. Not because she deserves it, but because you deserve to keep that part of yourself. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Instead, I buried myself back in paperwork, searching for any detail Emily might have missed. Hours later, after Desiree left, I found it, a discrepancy in the timing of transfers, a pattern hidden in plain sight. Emily hadn't been working alone. Someone else had accessed our accounts, someone with banking expertise. My hands shook as I pulled up an old photo on my phone. Emily's birthday last year, all of us celebrating. There in the background, smiling at the camera, Matthew, Desiree's brother, the friend who'd offered to help with my banking troubles. The final piece clicked into place, shattering whatever warmth Desiree's words had stirred. Emily hadn't just betrayed me, she'd built a whole network of deception, using my closest relationships against me. The cafe's front door chimed. Emily's silhouette appeared, right on schedule. Time to show her exactly what her betrayal had created. Emily looked smaller somehow, standing in my cafe's dim evening light. Her designer clothes hung loose, dark circles shadowed her eyes. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered Matthew's face in that photo, and my heart hardened. Lauren. Her voice cracked. Thank you for... Sit down. I gestured to the table where we'd planned this cafe's future together. Let's make this quick. She sank into the chair, hands twisting in her lap. I know you're angry. Angry doesn't begin to cover it. I stayed standing, needing the height advantage. Tell me something, Em. When did you recruit Matthew? Before or after you started draining my accounts? The color drained from her face. What? Don't. I slapped the transfer records on the table. His signature's all over these. The timing, the amounts. It had to be someone with banking experience, someone I trusted. Lauren, please. Was it his idea, the whole developer scheme, or did you corrupt him like you corrupt everything you touch? It wasn't like that. She stood abruptly, sending her chair scraping back. Matthew was trying to help. Help steal my life's work? Help save it. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You were drowning, Lauren. Too proud to see it, too stubborn to change. The cafe was failing months before I touched those accounts. The words hit like a physical blow. You're lying. Check the books yourself. The real ones, not the pretty fiction you were showing investors. 3 failed health inspections. Supplier costs skyrocketing. Customer numbers dropping every month. Because you were sabotaging me. Because you refused to adapt. She grabbed a napkin, wiping her eyes. Matthew saw it first. Said if we didn't intervene, you'd lose everything. At least this way, you get something out of it. My hands shook as I snatched up the papers. So this was what? Tough love? Betraying me for my own good? The developer's offer is real, more than this place is worth. You could start fresh, do something new. This is my home. The words exploded out of me. Every recipe, every regular, every morning rush. It's not just business. It's who I am. It's who you were. Emily's voice softened. Lauren, look around. Really look. When's the last time this place was full? When's the last time you paid yourself a real salary? You're holding on to a dream that's already dead. I wanted to scream that she was wrong, but memories flickered unbidden. Empty tables during peak hours, bounced checks I'd hidden from staff, sleepless nights calculating how to make rent. The papers are here. Emily pulled out an envelope. Signed tonight and everything's covered. Debt cleared, fresh start guaranteed. Keep fighting. She shrugged. Well, bankruptcy leaves fewer options. My phone buzzed. Zane, got the proof. Ready when you are. One text and I could destroy her. Expose the conspiracy. Ruin her career. Maybe even send her to jail. The plan I'd spent days crafting waited like a loaded gun. But her words echoed, cutting deeper than any betrayal. A dream that's already dead. You're right, I said quietly. Emily blinked. What? About the cafe struggling. About me being too proud to see it. I sank into the chair across from her. But you're wrong about one thing. What's that? That betrayal was your only option. I pulled out my own envelope. These are letters from regulars, staff, even competitors. People willing to invest, to help restructure, to fight for this place. People who believe in what we built here. Lauren, I could destroy you right now, show everyone what you and Matthew did. But then I'd be just like you, someone who destroys things instead of building them. Her hands trembled as she reached for the letters. I pulled them back. I'm not signing the developer's deal. Instead, I'm offering you a choice. A choice? Help me save this place, legitimately this time. Use your connections, your financial skills, everything you turned against me. Help me rebuild, or, I slid Zane's evidence folder across the table. Or I use this. Your call. Emily stared at the folder, then at me. In her eyes, I saw the same calculation I'd been wrestling with. Revenge versus redemption. Destruction versus creation. Why would you trust me again? She whispered. I don't. But I trust myself enough to try something different. I stood up. You have until morning to decide. Choose carefully. I left her there, surrounded by the wreckage of our friendship and the possibility of its resurrection. Outside, the night air felt clean, new. My phone buzzed again. Desiree this time. I answered, ready to face whatever came next. Sometimes saving a dream meant letting it change. Morning brought rain and Matthew's unexpected silhouette at my door. He stood there dripping, his banker's suit dark with water, looking nothing like the friend who'd offered financial advice over Sunday brunches. Emily told me what happened, he said. I let the silence stretch, remembering all the times he'd sat at my counter, watching me work while he helped balance my books. How many of those numbers had been lies? Aren't you gonna let me in? Depends. Are you here as my friend or Emily's accomplice? He flinched. Lauren, please, just let me explain. I stepped aside, not trusting myself to speak. He moved past me into the cafe, the familiar scent of his cologne now turning my stomach. The developer called this morning, he said, turning to face me. Emily didn't show up to sign the final paperwork. And? And he's pulling the offer. All of it. Matthew ran a hand through his wet hair. Do you understand what that means? The debt, the mortgage. I understand betrayal just fine. Thanks. Damn it, Lauren, I was trying to help. His composure cracked. You were hemorrhaging money, every month watching you pour more into this place, knowing it was only delaying the inevitable. So you and Emily decided to speed up the process? My laugh felt like broken glass. How generous. We had a plan, a clean exit, money to start fresh. He stepped closer. We can still salvage this. I have other investors. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop pretending this was about helping me. It was, is. Why can't you see that? Because real help doesn't come with lies. The words burst out of me. Real friends don't conspire behind your back, manipulate your accounts, push you toward failure to force their solution. And what's your solution? He gestured around the empty cafe. More 60-hour weeks? More credit card debt? More pretending everything's fine while you drown? Before I could answer, the door chimed. Zane walked in, stopping short at the tableau before him. Bad time? Perfect time, I said, not taking my eyes off Matthew. Show him. Zane pulled out his phone, playing a recording. Emily's voice filled the space. Once the property value crashes, we'll control the whole block. Lauren never has to know our part in it. Matthew's face went ash gray. Where did you get that? Turns out Emily's not great at checking for security cameras during her coffee meetings. Zane's voice was casual, but his eyes were hard. Got dozens of these. Really interesting stuff about artificial debt creation, forged signatures, market manipulation. You're bluffing. Want to test that theory? I stepped closer.
The last box of my life fit perfectly in the trunk of my beat-up Honda Civic. 15 years of marriage, reduced to cardboard containers and 2 suitcases. I stood in the driveway, keys dangling from my trembling fingers, when I heard their voices drift through the open window of what used to be my home. I always knew she wasn't good enough for my Damon. Michaela's voice sliced through the evening air. Now we can finally get rid of all traces of her artistic mess. I'm Elise, and this is how I lost everything I thought I had built. Well, almost everything. Mommy, can I bring Mr. Whiskers? My daughter Kylie's small voice called from the back seat, clutching her favorite stuffed cat. At least I hadn't lost what mattered most. Of course, sweetie. I managed a smile, though my chest felt like it was being crushed. The front door opened, and Michaela emerged, her perfectly coiffed silver hair catching the sunset. Still here? I thought I made it clear you needed to be gone by 6. Her lips curved into what others might mistake for a smile, but I knew better. We're leaving, I said, straightening my spine. Just making sure we didn't forget anything important. Important? She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Everything important belongs to the family, and you, dear, are no longer family. My fingers curled into fists. Kylie is family. Oh, we'll see about that too. Her words hit like ice water. Damon's lawyer will be in touch about custody arrangements. Before I could respond, a sleek BMW pulled into the driveway. Damon stepped out, Harmony close behind him, 29, gorgeous, and everything I apparently wasn't anymore at 34. Dad, Kylie called out, but I touched her shoulder gently. Not now, sweetheart. We need to go. Damon at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Elise, he started. Save it, I cut him off, climbing into the driver's seat. As I started the engine, I caught snippets of conversation through my open window. The gallery opening next month, Michaela was saying to someone on her phone. Make sure her name is removed from the list. In fact, let's make sure she's not welcome at any of the local exhibitions. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Art was my life, my career, my escape, and now she was trying to take that too. Where are we going? Kylie asked as we pulled away from the house. To Aunt Cadence's, I replied, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. Remember her? She's got that cool studio where you can paint whatever you want. Can we paint unicorns? All the unicorns in the world, baby. The drive to Cadence's small apartment took 20 minutes, each one feeling like an hour. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I checked it at a red light. Heard about your situation. Michaela's making calls. She's telling everyone you stole from the family. Better watch your back. A friend. My stomach churned. In our small town, Michaela's influence ran deep. She sat on every important board, attended every significant social event, and controlled more than just the art scene. Cadence was waiting outside when we pulled up, her wild curly hair a mess as usual. She rushed to help with our bags. I've got the guest room ready, she said, hugging me tight. And my studio is your studio. I don't know how to thank you, I whispered, by not giving up. She grabbed a box. Oh, and Penny Thompson called me earlier. She's looking for new artists for her gallery. Penny? But she's the only gallery owner in town who doesn't kiss Michaela's ring? Exactly. Cadence winked. Sometimes the universe has a way of opening doors when others slam shut. Later that night, after Kylie was asleep in the guest bed, I sat on Cadence's balcony with a glass of wine. My phone kept lighting up with notifications, friends suddenly unfriending me on social media, cancellations for commissioned pieces, and one particularly nasty email from the local art association. I heard Michaela's planning to drive you out of town completely, Cadence said, joining me with her own glass. She's telling everyone you're unstable, that you threatened Harmony. I laughed bitterly. Of course she is. You know what the best revenge would be? Cadence leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Success. Real, undeniable success. The kind she can't touch. I took a long sip of wine, considering her words. Maybe she was right. Maybe losing everything was exactly what I needed to finally build something of my own. First thing tomorrow, I said. I'm calling Penny Thompson. No, no, absolutely not. I shook my head at Cadence as she tried to arrange my paintings at the local farmer's market. The sunset piece needs more light. 2 weeks had passed since the night we'd fled to her apartment. My hands were paint-stained again, and for the first time in days, I felt something close to normal. There. Cadence adjusted the display. Now, remember what I said. Price them like you mean it. No more underselling yourself. I was about to argue when a familiar tune caught my attention. Someone was humming Moon River, my grandmother's favorite song. I turned to find an elegant woman in her 50s, studying my largest canvas. "This speaks to me," she said, tracing the air in front of the painting without touching it. "The anger in these brushstrokes. But there's hope too, like a storm breaking." "That's exactly what I was going for," I said, surprised by her insight. She turned, extending her hand. "I'm Penny, and you must be Elise." My heart skipped. "Penny Thompson? From the Grove Gallery?" "The very same." She smiled warmly. "Cadence has told me about your work, and about your situation." I shot Cadence a look, but she was suddenly very interested in reorganizing my business cards. "Don't be mad at her," Penny said. "We need to stick together in this town, especially with Michaela throwing her weight around." "You know Michaela?" Penny's laugh was sharp. "Oh, honey, everyone knows Michaela. She tried to shut down my gallery 3 years ago when I refused to feature her nephew's terrible photography." A young couple approached my booth, and I excused myself to help them. They were about to buy a small piece when the woman's phone buzzed. She checked it, whispered something to her partner, and they hurried away. "Let me guess," Penny said. "They got the mass text." "What mass text?" She pulled out her phone, showing me a message. "Warning. Local artist Elise G. sells fraudulent work. Pieces are copied from real artists. Avoid purchasing." My hands started shaking. She can't do this. She can't just... She can, and she is. Penny's voice was steel. "But here's what we're going to do about it." For the next hour, Penny outlined her plan. Her gallery was hosting a major show next month, featuring women artists from across the state. "I want you to be part of it," she said. "But Michaela?" "Michaela doesn't control my gallery." Penny's eyes sparkled. "And wait until you meet the other artists. There's something brewing in this town, something bigger than Michaela's petty revenge." Just then, Kylie came running up with Cadence's brother Terrence, who'd been watching her while I worked. "Mom, look what I made." She held up a friendship bracelet, beaming. "It's beautiful, sweetie." I knelt to examine it. "I made one for you too," she said, tying it around my wrist. "And one for Ms. Penny." Penny accepted the bracelet with genuine delight. "You know," she said to me quietly, as Kylie showed Terrence her other creations, "my mother used to say that the universe speaks through children. They see truth we adults sometimes miss." She hummed Moon River again, and suddenly I was back in my grandmother's studio, watching her paint while singing that very song. "How do you know that tune?" I asked. "Your grandmother taught it to me. Margaret was my first art teacher, back when I was just a girl with dreams bigger than this small town." My throat tightened. "You knew my grandmother?" "She's the reason I opened the Grove. She always said art should be accessible to everyone, not just the social elite." Penny touched my arm. "She'd be proud of you, you know, standing your ground." Later that evening, as I was packing up, a familiar BMW pulled into the parking lot. My heart raced as Damon stepped out. "Elise," he said, looking uncomfortable. "Can we talk?" "I think we said everything we needed to when you left." "It's about Kylie. Mother is... She's pushing for full custody. Says you're unstable, living with a friend, no steady income." "Stop." My voice was stronger than I felt. "Just stop. You want to talk about Kylie? Talk to my lawyer." "I never wanted..." "What you wanted stopped mattering the moment you chose her over your family." I turned to Penny, who had appeared silently beside me. "I'll see you tomorrow at the gallery?" 9 sharp, she smiled. "We have a show to plan." As Damon watched us walk away, Penny linked her arm through mine. "You know what your grandmother would say right now?" "What?" "The best revenge is living well. But," she added with a wink, "making amazing art that sells for thousands while your ex-mother-in-law watches helplessly is a close second." For the first time in weeks, I laughed, really laughed, and somewhere in that sound, I heard the beginning of something new taking shape. The Grove Gallery hummed with energy as I hung my final piece, a massive canvas depicting women rising from storm clouds, their faces both defiant and serene. 3 weeks of preparation had transformed the space into something magical. "Perfect placement," Penny said, adjusting the spotlight. "This one's going to be our centerpiece." A group of women gathered nearby, chatting excitedly. They were part of what we'd started calling the collective, local female artists who'd been silenced or sidelined over the years. Some by Michaela, others by different forces, but all with stories that needed telling. "Did you hear?" Cadence rushed in, barely containing her excitement. "The State Art Magazine is sending a reporter. Felicity just confirmed it." Penny's cousin Felicity, a journalist with connections throughout the art world, had been instrumental in spreading word about our show. "Ladies," Penny called out, clapping her hands, "circle up. We need to discuss tonight's preview." 20 women formed a loose circle in the gallery's center. I recognized faces I'd known for years but never really known. Sarah from the coffee shop, who did incredible metal sculptures, Maria, who taught art at the high school, Rebecca, who'd been rejected from every local show for being too controversial. "Tonight isn't just an art show," Penny continued. "It's a statement. Each of you has something powerful to say, and finally, we're saying it together." The front door chimed, and we all turned to see Harmony standing there, looking uncertain. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I saw the lights on, and I love art, and I heard about the show." The room went silent. My heart pounded as everyone looked between us. "Welcome," I said, surprising myself. "Would you like a tour?" Confusion crossed her face. "Oh, you're Elise?" "In the flesh." She started to back away. "I should go. I didn't know—" "Stay," Penny interjected. "Art doesn't discriminate. Neither do we." As I showed Harmony around, something unexpected happened. She was genuinely moved by the work, asking intelligent questions, sharing her own love of painting. "I used to paint," she admitted, "but Michaela said it wasn't appropriate for someone in her family to pursue such an, unstable career." "Sounds familiar," Rebecca muttered nearby. Before Harmony left, she paused at my centerpiece. "This is incredible," she said softly. I wish things were different." "They can be," I replied. The preview event began at 7. The gallery filled quickly with collectors, critics, and locals curious about the buzz. I was discussing my technique with a potential buyer when Cadence grabbed my arm. "Incoming," she whispered. "Michaela just pulled up." Sure enough, Michaela swept in moments later, her designer dress and perfectly coiffed hair a stark contrast to our artistic, casual vibe. She stopped dead when she saw my centerpiece. "What is this?" she demanded, turning to Penny. "You're featuring her work?" "I'm featuring 20 talented artists," Penny replied calmly, "each chosen on merit alone." "Merit?" Michaela laughed. "She's nothing but a failed housewife playing with paint." "Actually," a deep voice interrupted, "she's brilliant." A tall man in an expensive suit stepped forward. "I'm Marcus from the State Gallery Board. We're very interested in several pieces here, particularly Ms. Elise's series." Michaela's face reddened. "You can't be serious. She's creating exactly the kind of innovative, emotionally resonant work we're looking for," Marcus finished. "In fact, we'd like to discuss a traveling exhibition featuring the collective." The room buzzed with excitement. I caught Harmony's eye across the gallery. She'd returned with several friends. She gave me a small, encouraging smile. "This is absurd," Michaela sputtered. "I've supported this town's art scene for decades. I've guided it, shaped it, controlled it," Penny corrected, "but not anymore." One by one, women stepped forward, sharing stories of how Michaela had blocked their work, threatened their livelihoods, or demanded changes to their art to fit her vision. "You'll regret this," Michaela hissed at me. "All of you will." "The only regret," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "is how long we let one person dictate our artistic expression. That ends tonight." As Michaela stormed out, Felicity appeared with her camera. "Smile, ladies. This is going on the front page of tomorrow's arts section. The rest of the evening was a blur of sales, conversations, and possibilities. By closing time, most of my pieces had sold, including the centerpiece to Marcus himself. "We did it!" Cadence hugged me tight. "We actually did it!" "This is just the beginning," Penny announced to our group. "The collective is real now. We're a force to be reckoned with." Later, as we cleaned up, I found a note tucked into my purse, in Harmony's handwriting. "Thank you for showing me what courage looks like. I'm leaving him, and I'm starting to paint again." I smiled, pinning the note to the gallery's inspiration board. Sometimes revenge doesn't look like what you expect. Sometimes it looks like freedom. "Mom, look!" Kylie pointed excitedly at the newspaper. "That's you!" The arts section featured a full-color spread about the collective's gallery opening. My centerpiece dominated the page, with Felicity's article detailing our artistic revolution in a small town. The photo captured all of us, arms linked, smiling with the kind of confidence I thought I'd lost forever. My phone buzzed. Damon's number. "What do you want?" I answered, stepping onto Cadence's balcony. "Have you seen what you're doing to my mother?" His voice was tight. "She's in tears, Elise. People are canceling their memberships to her arts foundation." Funny how consequences work, isn't it? This isn't you. The Elise I knew wouldn't. The Elise you knew died the day you left. I gripped the railing. And this new version? She's done being silent. A knock at the door interrupted us. Cadence answered it, then called out urgently, "Elise, you need to see this." I hung up and rushed inside. Rebecca stood in the doorway, shaking. Her phone displayed a social media post, photos of her more controversial pieces alongside accusations of moral corruption and dangerous influences. The comments were vicious. "It's happening to all of us," she said. "Michaela's friends are reporting our social media accounts, calling our employers, even contacting our landlords." My own phone started flooding with notifications. Someone had posted old photos from my college days, twisted with suggestive captions and false stories. "She's trying to destroy us," Cadence said, scrolling through her phone. "Sarah just lost her coffee shop job. Maria's being questioned by the school board." "No," I said firmly. "We're not letting her win. Call everyone. Emergency meeting at Penny's. Now." Within an hour, the collective gathered in Penny's back garden. The fear was palpable, but so was the anger. "My landlord's threatening eviction," Maria said. "Apparently someone suggested I'm running an adult business from my apartment." "The school board's reviewing my contract," Rebecca added. "They're calling my art inappropriate for children." "Ladies," Penny's voice cut through the panic. "This is exactly what Michaela wants. Fear, division, surrender." "But what can we do?" Sarah asked. "She has all the power." "No," I stood up. "She has influence. We have truth. And numbers." Just then, an unexpected voice joined us. "And you have me." Harmony stepped into the garden, followed by Felicity. "Why should we trust you?" Rebecca demanded. "Because I have proof." Harmony held up her phone. Screenshots, emails, recordings, everything showing how Michaela manipulates people, including what she did to Elise and others before her. The garden erupted in discussion. Felicity examined Harmony's evidence with professional interest. "This is gold," she said, "but publishing it could be risky." "I don't care anymore," Harmony replied. "I watched her destroy my relationship with art. Then she tried to mold me into another one of her perfect society puppets. I'm done." My phone buzzed again. "Damon." "What now?" I answered. "Is Harmony with you?" He sounded different, worried. "Mother's losing it, Elise. She's talking about lawsuits, calling in favors. I've never seen her like this." "Good," I said. "Maybe she'll finally understand how it feels to lose control. Just be careful. She's not going to stop." As if on cue, our phones chimed simultaneously. A mass email from Michaela's Arts Foundation announced an emergency town hall meeting tomorrow night regarding the moral decay of our arts community. "Perfect," Penny smiled. "She's giving us exactly what we need, an audience." We spent the next hours planning. Felicity would prepare a story exposing Michaela's tactics. The collective would prepare a presentation of our work, focusing on its positive impact on the community. Harmony would speak publicly about her experiences. As everyone left, energized with purpose, I found myself alone with Harmony. "Why are you really helping us?" I asked. She touched one of my smaller paintings, a simple scene of Kylie painting. "Because this is real art. It makes people feel something true." She paused. I was wrong to let Michaela convince me that love could be calculated like a business transaction. "Does Damon know you're here?" "He will." She smiled sadly. "We both need to stop letting others define our worth." Later that night, as Kylie slept surrounded by her stuffed animals, I received another text from an unknown number. "Watch your back. Tomorrow night won't go as planned. Michaela's got something big prepared. A friend." I forwarded it to Penny, who responded immediately. "Good. The bigger she makes it, the harder she'll fall." I walked to my easel, where a new piece was taking shape, a phoenix rising from ashes, but the ashes were torn canvas and broken paintbrushes. Around it, small figures reached up, catching sparks and turning them into stars. "What are you painting, Mommy?" Kylie's sleepy voice surprised me. "The future, baby," I said, lifting her onto my lap. "Want to help?" She picked up a brush, and together we added more stars to the darkness, each one a tiny act of defiance against those who would dim our light. The town hall buzzed with tension as people filed in. Michaela stood at the podium, arranging papers with trembling hands, while her supporters filled the front rows. The collective sat together on the left side, our bright clothes a stark contrast to their muted tones. "She's got the mayor here," Cadence whispered, nodding toward the stage, "and half the city council." "Good," Penny replied. "More witnesses." Felicity slipped into the seat beside me. "Articles ready to go live, just waiting for the right moment." The lights dimmed, and Michaela tapped the microphone. "Thank you all for coming tonight. We're here to discuss a serious threat to our community's values." A slideshow started behind her, carefully selected images of our more provocative pieces, taken out of context. "These so-called artists are corrupting our town's cultural heritage." "That's my piece," Rebecca hissed. "She completely twisted its meaning." "And their leader," Michaela continued, clicking to a photo of me, clearly taken without my knowledge, "has a history of destructive behavior." The next slides showed social media posts I'd never made, emails I'd never written. My hands clenched into fists. "Furthermore," Michaela's voice rose, "these women are operating without proper permits, endangering our children with their radical ideas, and—" "That's enough." The voice rang out clear and firm. Harmony stood up from the back row. "Every word you're saying is a lie, and you know it." Michaela's face reddened. "Sit down, dear. You're confused." "No, I'm finally seeing clearly." Harmony walked to the center aisle. "Should I tell everyone about the fake social media accounts you created? Or how about the threatening calls you made to landlords and employers?" "Security!" Michaela called out, but no one moved. I stood up next. "Or should we discuss how you tried to take my daughter away because I wouldn't bow to your control?" One by one, the collective members rose, each sharing their story. Maria described the false complaints to the school board. Sarah detailed the lies told to her coffee shop employer. "This is ridiculous," Michaela sputtered. "I have proof." "Actually," Felicity stood, holding up her phone, "we have proof. Real proof. My article just went live, including recordings, screenshots, and sworn statements from dozens of people you've threatened over the years." The room erupted in murmurs as people pulled out their phones, reading the exposé in real time. "You can't do this to me," Michaela's voice cracked. "I built this town's art scene." "No," Penny walked to the podium. "You controlled it. There's a difference." She turned to address the crowd. "The real art scene is about community, growth, and truth. Let us show you." At her signal, the lights shifted, and hidden panels around the room dropped, revealing an impromptu gallery. Pieces from every collective member told stories of struggle, triumph, and human connection. "This is what art should be," Penny continued. "Not a weapon for social control, but a bridge between hearts." The mayor stood up, looking troubled. "These accusations against Michaela, they're very serious." "And true," a new voice added. Damon walked in, carrying a thick folder. I have copies of every email, every threat, every manipulated document, including what she planned to use to take Kylie away from her mother. Michaela staggered. Damon, how dare you? No, Mother, how dare you? You didn't just hurt Elise. You've hurt everyone in this room in some way, including me. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. People began moving away from Michaela, some joining the collective's side of the room. I moved to immediately suspend Michaela from all civic positions pending investigation, a council member announced. Seconded, another added quickly. You can't. Michaela grabbed the podium. Without me, this town's culture will collapse into chaos. Actually, I stepped forward. It will finally be free to grow. The vote was quick and decisive. As Michaela was escorted out, still protesting, the energy in the room shifted. People gathered around our artwork asking questions, sharing stories of their own experiences. Mom! Kylie ran to me from where she'd been waiting with Terrence. Did we win? I lifted her up, hugging her tight. We did something better, baby. We told the truth. Later that night, the collective gathered at Penny's gallery. Harmony and Damon joined us, both looking lighter somehow. So what now? Sarah asked, raising her glass. Now, Penny smiled. We build something new, something real. My phone buzzed with a text from Felicity. Story's gone viral. State papers picking it up. You're trending. But it wasn't the headlines I cared about. It was the sight of Kylie drawing alongside Rebecca's daughter, of Maria planning new classes for her students, of Sarah sketching ideas for her coffee shop's new art space. You know what this means? Cadence nudged me, grinning. The Autumn Arts Festival needs new leadership. I looked around at these women who had become more than colleagues. They were family now. I think we can handle that. Outside, the evening sky blazed with colors that begged to be painted, and for the first time in months, I felt completely, wonderfully free. You can't be serious. I stared at the email on Penny's computer screen. The National Arts Foundation wants to feature the collective? Not just feature, Penny grinned. They want us to headline their autumn showcase in New York. 2 months had passed since the town hall showdown. The collective had grown from 20 members to over 50, with artists coming from neighboring towns to join our movement. There's more, Penny clicked another email. Remember that developer who wanted to tear down the old theater for luxury condos? They're offering it to us instead, as a permanent gallery and teaching space. My coffee cup clattered against its saucer. How can we possibly afford? State arts funding, Felicity breezed in, waving a document. Just got approved. Turns out when you expose corruption in the arts community, people want to support positive change. The gallery door chimed. Harmony walked in, carrying a canvas covered in brown paper. Is that what I think it is? Cadence asked. Harmony nodded, carefully unwrapping her first completed painting since leaving Damon. I'm not sure it's good enough for— Stop, I interrupted. That's Michaela talking. Show us. The painting took our breath away. A woman emerging from a chrysalis. But the chrysalis was made of society pages and fashion magazines, crumbling away to reveal vibrant colors beneath. It's perfect for the showcase, Penny declared. Speaking of which, we need to discuss the opening night. We gathered around the planning table where Sarah was arranging a timeline. The developer's letting us use the theater for one night before renovations begin. We'll transform it into a multi-level gallery space. And look who RSVP'd, Felicity pulled up the guest list. Every major art critic in the state, 3 museum curators, and— The door chimed again. Damon walked in, looking uncomfortable. Can we talk? He asked me quietly. Outside, the autumn air was crisp. We walked in silence for a moment. Mother's leaving town, he finally said. Moving to Florida to live with her sister. Good. I'm sorry, Elise, for everything. For not seeing what was happening, for letting her control everything, for— Stop. I faced him. I'm not interested in apologies. What I care about is Kylie. That's why I'm here. I'm withdrawing the custody challenge. You're an amazing mother, and what we did, it wasn't right. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Maria. Turn on the local news, now. We rushed back inside just as Penny switched on the TV. Michaela was holding a press conference outside her mansion. These women are frauds, she declared, mascara running. I have proof their funding is based on lies. The autumn showcase will be a disaster, mark my words. What proof? Harmony scoffed. Doesn't matter, Felicity was
My name is Elena, a 23-year-old college senior with sights set firmly on becoming a journalist. But today, instead of celebrating my pending graduation, I'm trapped in a nightmare that's all too real. Barely 24 hours have passed since we buried my dad, Martin. He was the kind of father who managed to make me feel loved despite always being halfway across the world on business. The house feels emptier without him, a silent testament to the void his passing has left. As I stand in the foyer, still numb from the funeral, my mother Claudia and sister Victoria waste no time in announcing their plans. Their words ring in my ears like the tolling of a bell, a funeral knell for any lingering sense of family unity. "We're going to sell this house," Claudia says, the cold glint in her eye betraying her feigned solemnity. "Start looking for a new place, Elena. You better be out soon." I can hardly believe what I'm hearing. Before I can process the loss of my dad, they're already thinking about money and what they can gain from his death. It feels like a betrayal too large to comprehend. "You don't think you're entitled to anything, do you?" Victoria taunts, her boyfriend John chuckling beside her. Their cruel amusement makes my blood boil. I shouldn't be hearing these words, not at this moment when the pain is so raw. I never understood their greed, their obsession with wealth and appearances. I was the family outcast, too serious, too studious. Elena the dreamer, they'd mock. And now, faced with their scheming, all the years of indifference and mockery come to a head. "You're the worst," I cry out, unable to rein in my anger. "I'm done with this. I'm done with all of you." The bell rings, punctuating my outburst. Irritated at the interruption, I wipe away angry tears and swing the door open. A man in a dark suit stands before me, a briefcase in hand, his face striking a chord of vague recognition. "My condolences," he says solemnly. "May I come in?" Who is this stranger with a tone so grave, appearing at the most unexpected time? I'm not ready to deal with anyone else, not now. But something in his gaze tells me this isn't a mere courtesy visit. I step aside and let him enter, wondering what this could possibly mean for the fragile remnants of our broken family. The echo of my father's laughter once filled the hallways of our home, a balm to the sting of my mother and sister's sharper tones. Now those walls seem to press in on me, the memories of their hurtful words blending with the emptiness his absence has wrought. I'd always sought solace in my studies, believing that someday those books would lead me to a life of purpose, free from the shallow desires that drove Claudia and Victoria. But as I sit at the dining table, it's hard to focus on anything but the void Martin's passing left behind. Silent meals had become a new norm since Dad got sick and then passed away. Victoria would be on her phone, and Claudia would flip through high-fashion magazines, their detachment from our reality stark and unyielding. Their latest plan to dispose of our home and leave me behind hammered the final nail in the coffin of our family bonds. They seemed so eager to chase their fantasies of luxury condos and designer lives that nothing else mattered. Dad had been our anchor, and I'd expected at least a pretense of unity after he was gone. But now, faced with their naked opportunism, the lie of family was exposed, and something inside me snapped. Tired of being the outsider, the one who cared, I was ready to walk away from it all. Adrift in these thoughts, the doorbell rings, a sound I now associate with disruption and unwelcome news. At the door stands a man from my father's past, someone whose connections to our family had faded over time. "Good evening," he greets me. "I need to speak with you about your father's affairs." His solemn tone carries a formality that seems out of place in our disheveled living room, now a stark reminder of our discordant family. I nod, gesturing for him to sit down. Claudia and Victoria peek from the kitchen, their curious faces pinched with irritation. The man pulls out a stack of papers from his briefcase, his expression grim. "I'm Mr. Adams, your father's attorney. He entrusted me with his will and some final instructions," he explains as he adjusts his glasses, preparing to deliver news that feels poised to shake the foundations of our already crumbling household. Claudia leans in, her interest piqued. Victoria tries to look uninterested, yet hovers close by. As Mr. Adams begins to speak, I brace myself for what's to come, unsure of the consequences, but certain that our family dynamics are about to change once again. The room seems to contract with tension as Mr. Adams clears his throat, unfolding the document that held the final wishes of Martin, my father. Claudia and Victoria perched on the edge of their seats, their eyes betraying a keenness they'd struggled to mask since we lost him. In accordance with your father's requests, Mr. Adams starts, I am here to read the will and begin the process of executing his instructions. He looks around at each of us, perhaps gauging our readiness for what he's about to divulge. I can't help but feel a sense of dread. Growing up in the shadow of my mother and sister's expectations had taught me to expect little, to brace for disappointment. Yet, as the attorney's words begin to flow, it's evident that our expectations are about to be overturned. To my daughter Elena, I leave the entirety of my estate, including the family home and all accumulated savings and investments. The room falls silent, but for the rustling of paper and the distant ticking of the grandfather clock. Mr. Adams continues to read, but I barely register his words. All I can hear is the thundering beat of my heart and a kind of ringing in my ears. It can't be right. There must be some mistake. Me? I finally managed to stammer, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. But why? Victoria's chair scrapes violently against the floor as she stands, her eyes widening in a mix of shock and fury. Claudia, similarly stunned, remains seated, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. John, who had until now hovered quietly in the background, steps forward as if to protect or perhaps restrain Victoria. This is some kind of joke, right? He demands, but Mr. Adams simply offers a somber shake of his head. There's no error, he assures us. Martin was very specific in his directive. He believed that Elena, with her convictions and work ethic, would best honor his legacy and manage his assets responsibly. Claudia finds her voice as disbelief gives way to anger. But what of us? She snaps. Her mother and sister? Are we to be left with nothing while she takes everything? The question hangs in the air, a palpable cloud of resentment radiating from my mother and sister. I'm at a loss for words, torn between the immense responsibility thrust upon me and the sting of their evident greed. Mr. Adams meets my gaze. Martin had his reasons, which he believed would be understood in time. For now, we must discuss the next steps and the details of the estate. As he talks, I can't help but wonder what my father saw in me, what faith he had placed in my hands, and how I could ever hope to fulfill it amidst the ruins of our family unity. The silence after Mr. Adams's revelation feels almost as heavy as the sadness that gripped me during my father's funeral. Claudia and Victoria's outrage fills the room, crashing against my shock like waves against a cliff. For a moment, no one speaks. We're trapped in a standstill, the implications of my father's will cutting through the air like a cold wind. My reasons, Mr. Adams finally continues, looking directly at me, were detailed in a personal letter left to me by your father for you, Elena. I'm to give it to you after the reading of the will. Victoria's voice breaks the spell, but there must be some mistake. I mean, she can't just get everything. Her words ricochet off the walls, heralding a battle I have no desire to fight. John puts a restraining hand on her shoulder, but it does nothing to dampen her spirit. And what about us? What are we, strangers, he decided to discard after everything we've done for him? She seizes upon the words like a weapon, her voice rising to a crescendo of disbelief. Claudia's mask of shock peels away, revealing the anger beneath. Exactly, there must be some provision for this, some oversight or option for dispute. This is preposterous. Her hands grip the arms of her chair, knuckles whitening. I finally find my voice, feeble though it sounds even to my ears. I don't understand. Why would Dad do this? What was he thinking? My mind races with unanswered questions, all pointing to a man I realized I may never have truly known. Mr. Ray. Adams removes his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose before responding. Martin had his reasons, and he wanted you to know them. But in his own words. As for Claudia and Victoria, he turns to address them, you may contest the will if you wish, though Martin's instructions were explicit, and his sound mind, when drafting it, is well documented. The room falls into chaos once more. Voices clash as Claudia and Victoria express their anger and confusion, scrambling for a plan of action. I barely hear them. My thoughts are with the unopened letter, a final message from my father that burns a hole in the table where it lies. Taking a deep breath, I reach for the letter. The paper feels both insubstantial and as heavy as lead in my hands. Unfolding the creases, I prepare to read the words of a man who chose to speak from beyond the grave rather than in life, a man who has now left me an inheritance that feels more like a chalice of poison than a cup of blessings. Alone in my room, with the door securely closed, I unfolded the letter with trembling hands. Each crease seemed to hold a whisper of my father's voice, and as the written words appeared, I braced myself for the understanding that was about to come. Dearest Elena, it began in my father's familiar script. As you read this, I am sorry that I am not there to tell you these things in person. Sorry that I am leaving you with a burden that a parent should never bestow on their child. His apology, sincere and immediate, cut through the complexities of legal jargon and blunt revelations that had filled the air just moments ago. I inhaled deeply, the scent of ink on paper somewhat comforting. Your strength, your discipline, and your vision for a better world have never been invisible to me. In you, I saw the promise of a future that embraced honesty and integrity, far from the grasping hands of greed. The letter trembled in my hands, not from a breeze through the old window pane, but from the wellspring of emotions it unleashed. My eyes continued down the page. Elena, I've not been blind to the ways of our household. Your patience and hard work in the face of neglect by your mother and sister have been both my heartache and my pride. Giving you the entirety of my estate is my way of reconciling with the unfair responsibilities you've been forced to shoulder. Each sentence wove a tapestry of my father's unspoken observations and quiet support. The man who seemed a distant provider had been watching all along, understanding more than he let on. My only hope is that this inheritance will provide the freedom and the means for you to fulfill those aspirations that burn so brightly within you. Do not feel confined to fix what was broken long before you could make a difference. Live the life you deserve, my Elena. I folded the letter, pressing it against my chest, feeling the ink-etched love of a father who had seen his daughter's unassuming sacrifices. A wave of determination swept through me, mixed with the grief that had trailed me like a shadow since his passing. Leaving the safety of my room, I stepped back into the storm that was my fractured family. Mr. Adams glanced up as I entered, a silent question in his gaze. Claudia's glare was sharp, fixated on me, and Victoria was pacing like a caged animal, her earlier rage turned desperate. It's time to talk about what happens next, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. Claudia scoffed. What happens next is that we challenge this farce. Victoria nodded vehemently. You won't get away with this, Elena. We deserve our share. Mr. Adams interjected. Any legal challenge will be a lengthy and costly process with no guaranteed outcome. Martin's will is clear and well within his rights to enforce. With my father's words burning a hole in my pocket, I faced them, the family that had never truly been a family. It wasn't my decision, but it was his, and I intend to honor it. Tension wrapped chains around us all, but amid the chaos, one truth held steadfast. I would carry out my duty, uphold my father's wishes, and through them, perhaps find my own path to a better world. In the following days, the house became a war zone of oppressively silent mornings and thunderous arguments. Victoria and Claudia scoured legal forums and consulted with lawyers, desperately seeking a loophole to contest the will. They clung to the belief that they were entitled to Martin's legacy, viewing it as their rightful due rather than the gift of a man's life work. Despite their efforts, Mr. Adams remained unflappable, a steady pillar amid the tempest. His calm demeanor was a source of comfort as we navigated the uncharted waters of estate settlement. The will is airtight, Elena, he assured me once again over cups of tepid coffee in the formal dining room. You need not worry about their threats. Yet even with his reassurances, guilt gnawed at me. Was it right to accept everything, while my mother and sister got nothing? The logical part of my brain reminded me that my father had his reasons, but my heart couldn't shake the residual familial obligation, a desire to mend what was broken, even when I knew it was beyond repair. I spent my days preparing for the inevitable legal challenges and familiarizing myself with Martin's finances. The responsibility was daunting, running the numbers, making decisions about property and investments I never knew existed. Each step felt like wading through fog, but I was determined to see it through, to build on the small beacon of trust my father had left me. It was during these sessions of poring over financial statements that my mind would wander to the life awaiting beyond these walls, how to use this inheritance to forge a path aligned with my own values, how I could make a lasting impact. Amid the chaos, Claudia and Victoria grew increasingly agitated, their true colors seeping out in bursts of pettiness and spite. In an impulsive display, Victoria claimed sentimental family heirlooms, while Claudia hinted at dark secrets that could tarnish Martin's name. Their insinuations aimed to wound, to shake my resolve, but I had become adept at navigating their emotional minefields. One particularly tense evening, the air thick with unsaid threats and frigid stares, I reached my breaking point. "Enough," I said, the single word slicing through the tension. 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me, uncertain, wary. "I can't give you what Dad didn't leave for you, but what I can do is help you start over somewhere else." Their shock was palpable, an abrupt shift in the dynamic they had been fueling. "It won't be a life of luxury, but it will be a fresh start." Claudia's laughter was sharp, humorless. "A concession prize from our dearest Elena. How magnanimous." Her sarcasm was a familiar sting, but it glanced off the armor years of antagonism had helped me forge. I stood firm, despite the bitterness that clawed at the air between us. "It's not a prize. It's a choice. Take it or leave it. But understand this. I am moving forward, with or without your acceptance." Their response was a symphony of silence and begrudging nods, a tenuous agreement forged at the crossroads of greed and survival. As I retreated to my room, the letter's weight in my pocket reminded me of the journey ahead, one where I'd navigate not only the inheritance, but also who I would become as a consequence of it. The days turned into weeks as my life became a routine of meetings with Mr. Adams and navigating the complex process of realizing my inheritance. Claudia and Victoria, having reluctantly accepted my offer, began their search for a more modest place to call home. The atmosphere grew less contentious, though the air still held a chill that went beyond the coming of winter. It was a time of paradoxical solitude amidst the chaos. The house felt larger and more desolate with each packed box and removed piece of furniture. I found temporary solace in my father's study, which remained untouched, a capsule of the past that echoed with a time when family strife was just a faint undercurrent beneath the surface of our daily lives. The day finally came when Claudia and Victoria left the house for the last time. With the sign of a check and a curt farewell, they were gone, taking with them remnants of a life that was forever changed. Standing in the doorway, I watched as their car disappeared around the bend, feeling an unsettling mixture of relief and sorrow. It was time to look to the future. With Mr. Adams' help, I set up a charitable foundation in my father's name, dedicated to fostering educational opportunities for young underprivileged students like the younger version of myself, who once believed her dreams were unattainable within the confines of a home that didn't understand her aspirations. I enrolled in graduate school, pursuing a program in journalism that would put me on the path to the career I'd always envisioned. As I worked towards my master's degree, I used the network my father had left behind, along with the resources now at my disposal, to intern at a prominent newspaper. My life was busier than I ever imagined, filled with the pursuit of stories and justice, just like I discussed with my father on those long-distance calls that now felt like a lifetime ago. These days, I'm always on the go, carrying with me the principles that he instilled in me. The house, once a cage of sorts, began to feel more like a home as I made it my own. I repainted walls, rearranged furniture, and even adopted a rescue dog, a joyful presence that filled the emptiness with barks and boundless energy. The rooms that had once witnessed family feuds now opened up to friends, colleagues, and laughter. Sometimes I'd find myself in my father's study, poring over his old letters and the faded pages of his books. My eyes would linger on the signature at the bottom of his letter, the final message that had altered the course of my life. "Duty and love," he wrote, "are the strongest forces we wield. Use them well." And in those quiet moments, surrounded by the legacy of words and wisdom that my father left behind, I'd whisper a promise to do just that. My name is Adeline, and at 42, I find myself living a life far removed from the carefree dreams of my youth. My days are a relentless cycle, split between my clerical job and the dwindling family liquor store, a once thriving establishment now teetering on the edge of ruin. The store, nestled in a cozy corner of our neighborhood, had been the pride of our family for decades. It was a time when our name was synonymous with quality spirits, and our monopoly in the area was unchallenged. But as years passed, strict regulations strangled the nightlife, and our primary clientele, hotel banquet halls, pubs, and restaurants, dwindled to a mere trickle. In the midst of this decline stood my father, Harold, a man stubbornly clinging to the past. His management style, if one could call it that, was a recipe for disaster. Debts mounted, yet he persisted with his outdated methods, blind to the changing world around him. 2 years ago, in a desperate bid to salvage what was left of our legacy, I moved back into my childhood home. The liquor store, struggling to stay afloat, became my evening haunt after office hours. Each day as I stepped through its doors, the familiar jingle of the bell was a stark reminder of the burden I shouldered. "Dad, are you drinking again?" I'd often find him behind the counter, a bottle in hand, his laughter a stark contrast to the store's empty aisles. "Ha, these bottles aren't selling anyway." "Might as well enjoy them," he'd slur, the smell of alcohol heavy in the air. I'd sigh, a mix of frustration and resignation, as I set about cleaning the cluttered store and delving into the books. Our finances were a labyrinth of debts and overdue bills, a testament to years of neglect. Dinner was always a solitary affair, long past 9 p.m., after the day's tasks were done. My parents, lost in their own world, would be asleep, leaving the kitchen and the responsibility of meals to me. Every night, I'd prepare a simple meal, usually instant ramen, and then start prepping for the next morning's breakfast. My mom preferred bread, while Dad was a rice person. It was a small detail, but in our household, even the smallest preferences were my responsibility. Weekends, which should have been my respite, began at the crack of dawn, thanks to my mother, Irene. "Adeline, make your father's miso soup quickly," she'd demand, her voice cutting through any hopes of rest. "Why can't you do that, Mom?" I'd protest, only to be met with her sharp retort. "Why should I have to do the housework when you're here? Now get up." I had always been the meticulous one, the daughter who naturally took on chores and responsibilities. It started in high school, and by the time I graduated, I was the family's backbone. Tired of this endless cycle, I had taken up the office job right after school, hoping to escape. But escape, it seemed, was a luxury I couldn't afford. The liquor store's debts, a staggering $3 million, loomed over us like a dark cloud. Living frugally became second nature to me. $1 cosmetics, homemade lunches, enduring the cold to save on heating, all in a desperate bid to keep us afloat. One day, as I suggested leveraging the internet to boost sales, my father's response was as predictable as it was infuriating. "Our old way is the best way. I'm not the problem, the world is." His words echoed in my head as I juggled household chores with my attempts to rejuvenate the business. There was never enough time, always a step behind, always just out of reach of a solution. But I was determined. Against my father's resistance, I started online classes, selling rare alcohol from our store. This innovative approach was a hit, especially with restrictions limiting people's movements. Slowly, the business picked up. It was a glimmer of hope in an otherwise dark tunnel. But as our store's name gained online visibility, so too did my workload increase. Free time became a distant memory, yet I pushed on, believing it was all for the greater good. That belief, however, was about to be shattered. The rhythm of my life was an unending dance of duty and disappointment. Each day, I awoke to a world where my efforts seemed invisible to those who mattered most. My family's store, once a symbol of pride, had become a chain around my neck, dragging me down into an abyss of resentment and exhaustion. One particularly grueling evening, I found myself sifting through piles of overdue invoices, the numbers blurring before my eyes. The store was silent, save for the occasional clink of a bottle as my father, Harold, indulged in his habitual drinking. "Dad, we can't keep going like this. We're sinking," I said, my voice a mix of despair and frustration. He simply chuckled, his words slurred. "Ah, Adeline, always so serious. Relax, have a drink. It'll all work out." His nonchalance was like a slap in the face. How could he be so blind? The weight of our debts was crushing, and yet there he sat, drowning his sorrows in the very product that was supposed to be our salvation. The following morning, as I prepared breakfast, my mother, Irene, sauntered into the kitchen. "Make sure you clean the house today. Clara and her husband might visit," she ordered, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Clara, my younger sister, was the polar opposite of me. Free-spirited, carefree, she had floated through life on a cloud of whims and desires, always landing softly on the cushion of our parents' support. Even after marrying a man as aimless as herself, she continued to lean on our parents financially. As I scrubbed and cleaned, the bitter thoughts churned in my mind. Why was I the one to bear all this? Why did Clara get to live a life of leisure while I toiled away? Later that day, as Clara breezed into the store, her laughter echoed mockingly off the walls. "Oh, Adeline, still stuck in this old place? You really should get out more," she chided, her words tinged with a carelessness that stung. I bit back a sharp retort, focusing instead on the task at hand. The store, now a little busier thanks to my online efforts, demanded my full attention. But Clara's words lingered, a painful reminder of the life I could have had. That night, as I lay in bed, the exhaustion of my double life weighed heavily on me. My parents' indifference, Clara's thoughtlessness, the endless cycle of work, it was all becoming too much. A voice inside me whispered of change, of breaking free, but fear and duty held me back. The next day brought no respite. As I balanced the accounts, my mother's voice cut through the quiet. "Adeline, when are you going to settle down? You're not getting any younger, you know." I looked up, stunned. Was this really what she worried about? Not our failing business, not the crushing debt, but my marital status? "Maybe when our store isn't on the brink of collapse," I replied curtly, turning back to my work. Her scoff was the only response I received. As days turned into weeks, the strain began to take its toll. Sleepless nights, skipped meals, and constant stress left me worn and weary. But there was no time to rest, no time to breathe. The store, the house, my job, they all demanded more of me than I had to give. It was during one of these endless days that I received the news. Clara was pregnant. The family buzzed with excitement, a stark contrast to the chaos that was our reality. "That's great, the first grandchild," I managed to say, a forced smile on my lips. But my mother's next words were like a cold splash of water. "That's why you need to leave the house." I stared at her, disbelief and anger warring within me. "What? Why?" "You need to make room for Clara and her family," my father added, his tone dismissive. I was speechless. After everything I had done, sacrificed, endured, this was how they repaid me? A cold, unceremonious dismissal? The injustice of it burned my chest, a fire that threatened to consume me. But in that moment, something shifted within me. A resolve, steel and unwavering, took root. I would leave, but on my terms, and they would soon realize the true cost of their ingratitude. The decision to leave my childhood home, the epicenter of my lifelong sacrifices, didn't come easy. Yet, as I packed my belongings, each item I tucked away felt like a shard of the heavy chain I was shedding. The house, once a sanctuary of family memories, had morphed into a prison of ungrateful demands and unreciprocated toil. In the midst of my packing, my father Harold stumbled in, reeking of liquor. "What's this? Planning a little trip?" he sneered, his voice dripping with derision. I straightened up, meeting his bleary eyes with a calm I didn't feel. "I'm moving out," I stated, the words tasting like freedom. His reaction was a bitter laugh. "Moving out? And who's going to run the store? Cook and clean? You think you're irreplaceable?" His words, meant to wound, only strengthened my resolve. "You'll have to figure that out, won't you?" I replied, turning back to my packing. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Amidst the chaos of moving and handling my office work, I still found myself drawn back to the liquor store, the pull of responsibility too ingrained to ignore. One evening, as I was tidying up the store for what felt like the last time, Clara breezed in, her carefree demeanor unchanged. "So you're really leaving us, huh?" she asked, her voice light, almost mocking. I paused, a myriad of emotions swirling within me. "Yes, Clara, I am. Someone else can shoulder the burdens now." Her laughter was a cold echo in the empty store. "Oh, Adeline, always the martyr. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll manage without you." Her words, meant to belittle, only fueled the fire in my heart. My family's true colors were glaringly evident now, selfish, uncaring, and utterly blind to the sacrifices made in their name. The night before my departure, as I sat amidst boxes of my life, a sense of surreal calm enveloped me. The years of being the dependable daughter, the responsible sister, were coming to an end. But as I looked around the room, a wave of sadness hit me. This was the home where I grew up, where I laughed and cried, where I dreamed of a future that was never mine. My mother, Irene, appeared at my door, her expression unreadable. "You don't have to do this, Adeline. We need you here." Her words, so devoid of understanding, stung. "No, Mom, you needed me. You just never realized it." The day I left, the house was silent, an eerie testament to the void I was leaving behind. My parents stood by, their expressions a mix of confusion and resentment, as I loaded the last of my things into the car. As I drove away, the familiar streets of my childhood receded in the rearview mirror. I felt a pang of loss, but more than that, a burgeoning sense of relief. I was leaving behind a life of thankless servitude, stepping into a future where my worth wasn't measured by the sacrifices I made for others. But as the distance between me and my former life grew, so did my resolve. My family, so accustomed to my constant support, would soon face the harsh reality of their own making, and I, freed from their unappreciative grasp, would finally start living for myself. Settling into my new apartment, a modest but cozy space, I felt the first true breath of freedom I had experienced in years. It was a stark contrast to the burdensome atmosphere of my parents' house. Yet, even in this newfound tranquility, the echoes of my past life haunted me. It wasn't long before the reality of my family's dependence on me became painfully apparent. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from home. Each plea for help, each demand for my return, was a reminder of the suffocating expectations I had escaped. One evening, as I was preparing a simple dinner for myself, my phone lit up with a familiar number. Bracing myself, I answered. It was my father, Harold, his voice slurred and angry. "Adeline, where are you? The store is a mess. We need you here," he barked into the phone. I clenched my jaw, the old feelings of obligation tugging at me. "Dad, I've moved out. You and Clara will have to manage on your own." His response was a string of insults and accusations, blaming me for abandoning the family in their time of need. His words were like daggers, aimed to wound, but I had grown a shield of resolve. "I'm not your crutch anymore, Dad. You'll have to stand on your own," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. The days that followed were a relentless barrage of guilt trips and emotional blackmail. My mother, Irene, played her part well, lamenting how I could leave my family in such dire straits. "You're being selfish, Adeline. Think about what you're doing to us," she implored during one of her many calls. But the years of neglect and underappreciation had hardened my heart. "I've thought about it for far too long, Mom. Now, it's time for me to think about myself." Amidst this tumult, I found solace in my work and the few friends I had kept at a distance over the years. Among them was Marcus, a colleague from the office who had always been kind, but whom I had never allowed myself to get close to. One day, after a particularly grueling call with my mother, Marcus noticed my distress. "Adeline, you okay? You've been looking really stressed lately," he said, his concern genuine. I hesitated, then decided to open up. "It's just family stuff. I recently moved out, and they're not taking it well." Marcus listened intently, offering a sympathetic ear and words of encouragement. His kindness was a balm to my weary soul. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen and understood. But the reprieve was short-lived. The stress of juggling my new life, the constant barrage from my family, and the lingering guilt took its toll. One day at work, as I sat at my desk, the room began to spin. The last thing I remember was Marcus's voice calling my name before everything went black. I awoke in a hospital bed, my head throbbing with pain. Marcus was there, his face etched with worry. "You gave us quite a scare, Adeline. You collapsed and hit your head. How are you feeling?" Tears welled up in my eyes, not from the pain, but from the overwhelming sense of care and concern I had been denied for so long. "Thank you, Marcus. I don't know what to say." Marcus squeezed my hand gently. "Don't say anything. Just focus on getting better. And maybe, when you're ready, think about making some changes. You can't keep going like this." His words resonated deep within me. For so long I had lived for others, neglecting my own well-being. It was time to make a change, to live for myself. As I lay in that hospital bed, the realization hit me hard. My family's selfishness and dependence had nearly broken me. But now, I was on the path to healing and self-discovery, and I was determined to not let anyone pull me back into the abyss from which I had just crawled out. Recovering from the incident at work, I found myself at a crossroads. Marcus's words echoed in my mind, urging me to change the trajectory of my life. It was time to prioritize my health and happiness over the never-ending demands of my family. The decision was made. I would no longer be at the beck and call of my parents and Clara. This newfound resolve, however, did not stop the onslaught of calls and messages, each more desperate and manipulative than the last. One evening, as I sifted through my mail, a call from my mother, Irene, came through. Her voice was shrill, laced with panic and anger. "Adeline, you need to come back. The store is failing without you. We're struggling to keep up." Her plea was a twisted symphony of guilt and blame. "You're responsible for this mess. You can't just abandon your family." I felt a surge of anger, but it was quickly replaced by a steely calm. "No, Mom, I'm not responsible for the years of mismanagement and neglect. You and Dad made your bed. Now you have to lie in it." Her response was a mix of incredulous outrage and desperate bargaining, but I stood firm. The chains of guilt and obligation had been broken. As days turned into weeks, the frequency of their calls diminished, replaced by a foreboding silence. I immersed myself in my work and started exploring hobbies I had long neglected. Life was beginning to have a semblance of normalcy and peace. Then, one day, a call from Clara jolted me back to reality. Her voice was hysterical, a stark contrast to her usual carefree tone. "Adeline, you have to help us. The store is on the brink of closure. We're drowning in debt." Her words were laced with panic and a hint of realization of the gravity of their situation. But it was too late. "Clara, I warned you all. I can't fix years of mistakes and neglect. You need to figure it out," I replied, my voice void of the sympathy she sought. The call ended with Clara's sobs and pleas echoing in my ears, but they no longer had the power to sway me. My family had to face the consequences of their actions, the result of years of taking my efforts for granted. Weeks passed, and the inevitable news arrived. The family liquor store, once a cornerstone of our neighborhood, had closed its doors for good. The failure of the business was a harsh blow to my parents and Clara, a bitter taste of reality they had long avoided. I heard through mutual acquaintances about the chaos that ensued. My parents, unable to cope with their new reality, were consumed by blame and regret. Clara and her husband, faced with the harshness of responsibility, were at a loss, their illusory world shattered. There was a part of me that felt vindicated, seeing them finally reap what they had sown. But there was also a pang of sadness for what could have been if only they had appreciated and reciprocated my efforts. As I reflected on these events, I realized this was not just the end of the family business, but the end of a chapter in my life, a chapter filled with sacrifice and unacknowledged labor. Now it was time to write a new story, one where I was the protagonist of my own life. Life in my new world, unshackled from the chains of familial obligation, was a revelation. My days, once dictated by the whims and needs of my parents and Clara, were now my own. I relished the freedom, the ability to make decisions for myself without the cloud of guilt and manipulation that had hovered over me for so long. But even in this newfound paradise, the specter of my old life occasionally intruded. One day, as I was enjoying a quiet evening at home, my phone rang with an all-too-familiar number. The sight of it stirred a mix of irritation and curiosity. Bracing myself, I answered. It was my mother, Irene, her voice tinged with desperation. "Adeline, you have to come back. We're in trouble. The debt collectors are after us." Her plea, once capable of dragging me back into the mire, now fell on deaf ears. "Mom, I've told you before. I can't help you. You need to sort this out yourselves." "But we're your family. How can you abandon us like this?" she cried, the audacity of her words almost laughable. "Family?" I retorted, my voice cold. "The same family that took my efforts for granted, that kicked me out when I was no longer convenient? I think you've mistaken me for someone else." The line went dead, her silence more telling than any words could be. They were finally starting to understand the gravity of their situation, the consequences of their actions. Over the next few weeks, news of my family's plight trickled in through various channels. The once proud owners of the neighborhood liquor store were now pariahs, weighed down by debt and shunned by those they had once considered friends. My sister Clara, who had never known a day of hard work, was now facing the harsh realities of life. Her husband, equally inept at dealing with adversity, was no support. Their marriage, built on convenience and financial dependence, was crumbling under the strain. I heard about their heated arguments, their desperate attempts to find easy ways out, and their incessant blaming of each other for their downfall. It was a pitiful sight, yet a part of me felt a sense of poetic justice. They were finally experiencing a fraction of the hardships I had endured for their sake. But it was during a chance encounter at a local cafe that the full extent of their decline became apparent. Seated at a corner table, I saw my parents, haggard and worn. They were arguing, their voices a mix of anger and despair. I watched unseen as they laid bare the years of mismanagement and selfish decisions that had led to their undoing. The sight was sobering. This was the family I had left behind, a family that had never valued me until I was gone. Their downfall was of their own making, a direct result of their actions and choices. As I left the cafe, a sense of closure washed over me. I had moved on, built a life where I was valued and appreciated. The echoes of my past, though still lingering, were just that, echoes. They no longer had the power to dictate my life or my happiness. The chapter of my life, defined by thankless sacrifice and unreciprocated loyalty, was closed. Ahead lay a path of self-discovery and fulfillment, a journey I was eager to embark on. The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, each passing moment affirming my decision to step away from the life that had once threatened to suffocate me. I had created a world for myself, a sanctuary where respect and self-care were not just ideals, but realities. In this new life, I found joy in the small things. The quiet mornings, the leisurely walks, the books I had always wanted to read but never had the time for. My job, once a mere escape from the chaos at home, now became a source of fulfillment and growth. It was during this period of tranquility that Marcus, my colleague who'd been a pillar of support, became more than just a friend. Our shared experiences at work and his unwavering kindness during my tumultuous times blossomed into a deep, meaningful relationship. One crisp autumn evening, as we walked through the park, Marcus stopped, his eyes locking with mine. "Adeline, you've changed so much since we first met. You're stronger, happier. I'm glad I've been a part of this journey with you." His words, simple yet profound, filled my heart. "Marcus, you've been my rock. I don't think I could have made it through without you." As we stood there, amidst the falling leaves, a profound sense of contentment enveloped me. I had come so far from the woman who lived only to serve the whims of her ungrateful family. However, the echoes of my past were not completely silenced. News about my family still reached me, each update a grim reminder of their continuous downward spiral. The once thriving liquor store was now a forgotten relic, its doors permanently shut. My parents, stripped of their pride and business, were a shadow of their former selves, embroiled in a never-ending cycle of blame and regret. Clara and her husband, having lost their financial safety net, were adrift in a sea of their own making. Their frivolous lifestyle, once sustained by my efforts, was now a distant memory. I sat in the stillness of my apartment the night before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. My phone rang, slicing through the quiet. It was Richard, my fiancé. Hello? Richard, is everything okay? I asked, sensing something off in his voice. Elena, I can't marry you, Richard said, his voice devoid of the warmth I knew. A cold wave of shock washed over me. What do you mean? This isn't funny, Richard. It's not a joke, Elena. I'm already married, to someone else. His words were like a dagger to my heart. Married? But we're getting married tomorrow. How could you do this? I struggled to keep my voice steady. I just can't be with someone who overshadows me. You're a top executive, and I'm not. It's too much for me. His tone was emotionless. So this was about his ego. You knew about my job. For 2 years you said nothing, and now this? I need someone simpler, someone who doesn't outdo me. The mix of hurt and disbelief inside me was boiling into anger. And you decide this now, the night before our wedding? Who is she, Richard? It doesn't matter. I've made my choice. You coward, I hissed, anger surging. You let me plan our life together, and now you're backing out like this. I'm sorry, Elena. It is what it is. You're not sorry. You're a coward. I'm glad I know your true colors before it's too late. There was a pause. You'll regret this, Elena. You need me. I don't need a man who doesn't respect me. Goodbye, Richard. I ended the call, my hand shaking with a mix of rage and shock. Sitting alone, the magnitude of the conversation hit me. The man I thought I knew was nothing but a lie. But amidst the hurt, I felt a surprising relief. This wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. My chance to rebuild my life without Richard's deceitful shadow. My heart hardened with determination. Richard had wounded me deeply, but I wouldn't let him get away with it. He would regret crossing me. I would make sure of that. I lay awake that night, the darkness of my bedroom mirroring the turmoil in my mind. How had I not seen Richard's true colors? Our relationship, once a source of joy, now felt like a well-crafted facade. The painful realization stung. I thought back to how it all started. My uncle, a well-respected businessman, had introduced me to Richard. He's a promising sales manager, he had said. You two might hit it off. I was reluctant, but I agreed to meet Richard out of respect for my uncle. Our first meeting was at a quiet cafe. Richard was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in my career as a marketing executive. We clicked instantly. I thought I had found someone who understood and respected my ambitions. But as I lay there, replaying our conversations, the signs were clear. Richard's subtle digs at my achievements, his veiled comments about women in leadership, they were all red flags I had ignored. He was never proud of me. He was intimidated by me. I remembered the times he'd belittle my work. It's just marketing, Elena. It's not like you're saving lives, he'd scoff. His words, once brushed off as harmless jokes, now echoed in my mind as clear indicators of his resentment. It dawned on me that his recent behavior, the late nights, the sudden business trips, it wasn't just work. He was seeing someone else. The pieces fell into place, forming a picture of betrayal. I got out of bed, my mind racing with anger and hurt. Richard had humiliated me, but I wasn't going to let him have the last word. He had underestimated me, and that was his biggest mistake. I opened my laptop and began to draft an email to my colleagues. Richard and I had invited them to our wedding, and they deserved to know the truth. I wrote with a clear purpose, detailing Richard's betrayal without sounding bitter. I wanted the facts to speak for themselves. As I hit send, a sense of empowerment washed over me. This was just the beginning. Richard had tried to break me, but instead he had awakened a strength I never knew I had. I would make him regret ever taking me for granted. The game had just begun. The next morning I woke up to a flurry of messages. Colleagues, friends, family, everyone was shocked. The news of Richard's deceit had spread like wildfire. There was an outpouring of support for me, but among these, one message caught my eye. It was from Richard. Can we meet? I think there's been a misunderstanding, his message read. Misunderstanding? The audacity of that word made my blood boil. I agreed to meet him, not for reconciliation, but to confront him, to face the man who had tried to break me. We met at a park, a neutral ground away from prying eyes. Richard was there, looking disheveled, a stark contrast to the composed man I once knew. Elena, thank you for meeting me. I think you got it all wrong, he started, but I cut him off. Save it, Richard. There's nothing you can say to justify your actions. You're a liar and a cheat. What did you expect, calling off our wedding and admitting you're already married? Richard's face reddened. I didn't expect you to react this way. You're blowing this out of proportion. Out of proportion? You were living a double life, Richard. What did you expect me to do? Smile and wish you a happy marriage? He shifted uncomfortably. Look, I know I messed up, but can't we put this behind us? I mean, we were good together, weren't we? I stared at him in disbelief. Put this behind us? You humiliated me, Richard, and now you expect me to just forget it? Elena, please, I know I've made a mistake, but I need you. My job is at risk because of this mess. You have connections. You can help me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want my help? After everything you've done? He took a step closer. Elena, we can sort this out. I know people are talking, but we can fix this. Together. I stepped back, my resolve hardening. The only thing that needs fixing is your moral compass, Richard. We are done. And as for your job, you should have thought about that before you betrayed me. I turned and walked away, leaving Richard standing there, a picture of desperation. I felt a surge of strength within me. Richard thought he could manipulate me, but he was wrong. I was not the same person he had toyed with. The game had changed, and I was now the one in control. The days following my confrontation with Richard were a whirlwind. My mind was constantly racing, not with sadness but with a burning desire for retribution. Richard had tried to crush me, but he had only fueled my determination. I started by reaching out to a few trusted colleagues and friends, laying the groundwork for my plan. Word of mouth was powerful, and I intended to use it to expose Richard's true character. I shared my story not as a victim, but as a survivor of deceit. My narrative was factual, yet poignant, a tale of betrayal by a man who was a master of manipulation. Then came the opportunity I was waiting for. An industry event was coming up, one Richard and I were supposed to attend together. I decided to go alone, knowing well that Richard would be there. The evening of the event, I walked into the room with confidence. I could feel the eyes on me, the whispered conversations. I spotted Richard in the crowd, his face a mask of unease. As I mingled, I overheard snippets of conversation. That's Elena. Can you believe what Richard did to her? The word was spreading, just as I had planned. Then, Richard approached me, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. Elena, we need to talk. You're ruining me. I looked him straight in the eyes. I'm not doing anything, Richard. If your reputation is ruined, you have only yourself to blame. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Making me the villain. I pulled my arm away. I don't need to make you a villain, Richard. You did that all by yourself. As I walked away, I could feel Richard's eyes burning into my back, but I didn't care. I was no longer the woman he thought he could control. The event was a success. By the end of the night, Richard's deceit was the talk of the town. His professional reputation was crumbling, just as he had tried to shatter mine. But this was just the beginning. I knew Richard would not go down without a fight. I needed to be ready for whatever he had planned. My resolve was firm. I would not back down. This was my battle, and I was determined to win. A few days after the industry event, I was at my office when my phone buzzed with an unexpected call. It was Richard. Against my better judgment, I answered, curiosity getting the better of me. Elena, you need to stop this madness. Richard's voice was laced with frustration. This isn't my doing, Richard. It's the consequence of your actions, I replied coolly. You're destroying my career. I've lost clients, friends. His voice trailed off into a mix of anger and desperation. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to betray me and lie to everyone, I retorted. I need your help, Elena. You have the power to fix this, to clear my name, he pleaded. Help you? After everything you've done? You must be delusional. I couldn't hide the contempt in my voice. Elena, please, we were good together once. Can't you remember that? There was a hint of something in his voice that sounded almost like sincerity. All I remember is a liar who was leading a double life, I snapped back. There was a pause on the line, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed. It was colder, more calculating. You'll regret this, Elena. If I go down, I'll make sure you come down with me. A chill ran down my spine at his threat, but I refused to show my fear. Is that a threat, Richard? It's a promise, he said, his voice now a menacing whisper. Good luck with that, I said, and ended the call. As I sat back in my chair, I realized that this was far from over. Richard's threat loomed over me, but I was not about to let him intimidate me. I had come too far to back down now. I started to document everything, the calls, messages, any interaction with Richard. If he was planning to come after me, I would be ready. But as I delved deeper into my preparations, I found an unexpected ally. One of Richard's colleagues reached out to me, offering information about Richard's past misdemeanors at work, instances of credit stealing, manipulation, even harassment. It was more than I could have hoped for. Armed with this new information, I knew what I had to do. It was time to take the fight to Richard. I was going to expose him for who he truly was, not just to our social circle, but to his professional world as well. Richard had started this war, but I was going to finish it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. With the information provided by Richard's colleague, I meticulously compiled a dossier of his professional misconduct. It was a damning portrait of a man who had built his career on deceit and manipulation. I reached out to Richard's company's HR department, presenting them with the evidence. The response was swift and decisive. Richard was suspended pending a full investigation. The news spread quickly, and soon Richard's professional reputation was in tatters. But I wasn't done yet. I had one last card to play. I filed a legal claim against Richard for emotional distress and the financial losses incurred due to the canceled wedding. It was a bold move, but I was determined to hold him accountable. As I walked out of my lawyer's office, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had stood up to Richard, and I had won. But it was a hollow victory. The man I had once loved was now nothing but a bitter memory. In the midst of all this, my uncle reached out to me. "Elena, you've handled this situation with incredible strength and grace," he said. I shrugged. I did what I had to do. "There's something I want to discuss with you," he continued. "I've been thinking about retirement, and I believe you're the perfect person to take over the business." I was taken aback. "Me? But, Uncle, there are others far more qualified." "You have a keen mind for business, Elena. You've shown that time and again. I can't think of anyone better to lead the company into the future," he insisted. I was hesitant at first, but as we talked, the idea began to take root. This was my chance to step out of Richard's shadow and make a name for myself. "I'll do it," I finally said. "I'll take over the business." My uncle smiled. "I knew you would. I have every confidence in you." As I left my uncle's office, I felt a sense of purpose and excitement for the first time in months. I was going to lead my uncle's company, and I was going to make it my own. Richard had tried to break me, but he had only made me stronger. I was no longer the woman he had betrayed. I was a leader, a fighter, and a survivor. As I looked ahead to the future, I knew there were challenges ahead, but I was ready for them. I had emerged from this ordeal stronger and more determined than ever. Richard's betrayal had been the catalyst for my transformation. I had lost a fiancé, but I had found myself. And that was worth more than any wedding could ever be.